continue to work on improvements to the process to reduce the extent to which it occurs. Importantly, however, none of these errors affected how the hand-marked paper ballots that we use to vote are actually counted by ballot tabulators. Any errors in the reporting of unofficial results were quickly caught soon after they occurred or during the county canvass, when canvassers reviewed tabulator tapes before certifying official results. Because some comments had focused on Detroit, I will also note that we saw there a reduction in the clerical errors that led to precincts being out of balance. That is, when records show the number of ballots tabulated does not match exactly the poll look number. Although we need continued improvement in this area, by any metric, November was a better run election in Detroit than the August primary or the November 2016 general. The percentage of balanced or explained precincts in Detroit was 72%, up from 42% in November 2016 and up from 54% in August of this year. The percentage of precincts that can be recounted is likely significantly higher than 72% because we can recount it if the number of ballots in the ballot container matches the tabulated total, a figure not reflected in the out-of-balance totals. We likely will have several recounts across the state following certification, including in Wayne County, before audits occur. In auditing jurisdictions after certification, those out-of-balance precincts will be a point of focus, and I expect that we will find, as we typically do, that these issues can be explained, can be fixed by process improvement, and do not mean that votes were not properly counted. By performing a statewide risk-limiting audit, as we did after March, we will also be able to confirm that our tabulators counted ballots accurately. Finally, I'll just note that under our election law, these audits must occur after certification because we don't have legal authority to inspect the materials we need until that time. Therefore, despite the request to start audits sooner, we have not identified any provision of law that would allow for some sort of special pre-certification audit or authority for the board to conduct that. On that point, however, in closing, I will just pass it off to Heather Mingass from the Attorney General's office, who may have some additional clarification or elaboration on that point. And then with that, I will just hand it off, and thank you again.
Heather? Thank you, Director Brader. I would just echo Jonathan's comments that we've looked at the issue of whether the board has the authority to request an audit itself before choosing or voting on the manner of certification, or whether some other person can compel upon the board and request the board to do such an audit. And if we're talking about an audit as used in the Constitution and the statute, which is MCL 168.31A, both of those, both the Constitution and the statute, clearly contemplate that we are conducting audits post-election. In other words, the Constitution itself gives people the right to request an audit of a statewide election result. And so we don't have statewide results until this board certifies. So under the Constitution, it would have to be interpreted as well to contemplate post-election audits. And then I think if you look at Section 168.31A as well, the language there also makes it clear that it contemplates post-election audits, and it clarifies that an audit does not act as a recount, nor does it change certified results. So that language itself suggests that we're looking at an audit post-election. I would just echo Director Brader's comments with respect to the ability to hold an audit or conduct an audit as that phrase is used in the Constitution or the statute itself.
Chairwoman Bradshaw?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion. Based on an examination of the election returns received by the Secretary of State for the November 3rd, 2020 general election, we, the Board of State Canvassers, certify that the attached reports are true statements of the votes cast at the election for the offices certified by this board and for the electors of President and Vice President of the United States. We will further certify that the persons named on the attached listing were duly elected for the indicated offices and that state proposals 20-1 and 20-2 passed.
Is there support?
At this point, I would just request that we hear more public testimony and hear more from the people who have requested to speak here today. And I'm not saying I'm for or against this motion right now, but at this point, we have a list of people ready to speak today. We have, I don't know how many members of the public who have signed up to speak, and I would just ask that to take some time, listen to them first, and then we can consider this motion.
I would say that we put the motion on the floor and then we can discuss it. I would rather have it out front as opposed to the 780 or 800 public comments that are listed. I would encourage people when they're making comments to speak to the motion, however. So I continue to move this.
I would continue to ask that we have additional time to listen to public testimony at this point in time. And I think, I think this duty, the board's duty today is very clear. We have a duty to certify this election based on the returns. That is very clear. And we are limited to these returns. And I'm not going to argue that we're not. But I still think the people who have signed up to speak today should have the chance to speak before we act on this motion. So I will make that statement. I think we're pretty limited today. I think we've got a duty to do this. But I also think we owe it to the people to allow them to speak.
And I don't in any way want to keep anybody from speaking, but I would like this motion on the floor with a second so we can stay focused on that.
So I have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Not at this time.
I will second the motion. Is there discussion on the motion?
So how do we wish to proceed hearing people's comments? I know that there's a lot of people on the line.
Board members, I do have a number of people who wish to speak, and I will like to call the first one, if I may, and that would be Chris Thomas, former Director of Elections.
Just a quick question. With the motion on the table, though, can we hold for the time being, or do we need to act on it?
So I would consider this part of the discussion of the motion.
Fair point.
Okay. Do we have Chris Thomas? It looks like we do.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Chris, I believe we can hear you. There's a little bit of a pause, so I want to make sure. So if you can state and spell your first name for the record, please. First and last name. I'm sorry.
Yes, it's Christopher Thomas, CHRISTOPHER, Thomas, THOMAS. Pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I'm here to answer questions, specifically told that Mr. Schinkel may have some. As you're aware, I have been working with the Detroit City Clerk as a senior advisor during the general election. My time with her is from mid-September until mid-December. I have been involved with the planning for the general election, dealing with the TCF operation, and several other issues with satellite sites, drop boxes, and whatnot. I've been impressed with the city of Detroit's turn that they have made since 2016 and since the August primary of this year. As you know, there is no jurisdiction anywhere near the size or complexity of Detroit in our 1,500 cities and townships. Detroit had 174,000 mail ballots, representing 68% of the vote. That is more than double the amount that they had in the primary, which was also a record at that time at 81,000. So the the desire to vote by mail in a time of pandemic was palpable in the city of Detroit. I talked with Ms. Winfrey last spring when they were putting together plans on how they would handle an election by mail. They have moved in the area of high-speed tabulators, which really were a lifesaver in terms of being able to manage and report in a timely basis the unofficial results. At some point in our meeting, Daniel Baxter should be on here. He was a former director in Detroit and ran the TCF operation. They made great strides in terms of accountability with the balloting, the check-in, and the tabulation compared to the primary. Director Brader has indicated in his staff report some very positive indications of Detroit's increase in terms of accuracy and accountability. And I'm going to say that this board should understand that you played a role in that. You have raised your voice about not only Detroit, but other jurisdictions, but in most particularly with Detroit, in terms of their processing of absentee ballots back in 2016 and again in this primary. There have been resources from the city applied, and they have had a benefit. Is there work still to be done? Yes. And there's commitments to continue that work. New technology has been brought to bear on this process, and in the future is going to have even more beneficial effects. The fact of the matter is Detroit, like many jurisdictions in this state, had a tsunami of mail ballots descend upon it and dealt with them as best we could. I think it's incredible for the clerks of this state and also of Detroit that they could make a pivot from a 70% in-person voting or 75% in-person voting environment to close to a 70% by mail voting environment in the middle of a pandemic. When I first started talking to Ms. Winfrey about the 2020 election last spring, it was in the midst of a time when she and many people in the city of Detroit knew folks who had died from the pandemic. I'm over on the west side of the state in St. Joseph. We're experiencing much of what they experienced in Detroit last March and April. We were not hard hit in the spring, and it seemed somewhat foreign to me, but it was absolutely clear that people had fear of that pandemic and really were attempting to avoid large public gatherings. So hence the planning that went into providing a vote by mail. With 21 satellite sites set up and 30 drop boxes around the city, Detroit's voters were given that opportunity and they took advantage of it. And I'm pleased with what has occurred. So when you look at what was done in the polling place, and again, you need to hear from Daniel Baxter today, but you know, the first city in the state to use the electronic poll book in an absent voter counting board provided critical accountability. We use Reliable, which is a technology to check in ballots and to try to keep the accountability going. We use counting boards, not precincts. So in the primary, we use precincts because precinct delegates made each ballot unique. In the general election, we use counting boards. We're the only jurisdiction that's allowed to do that by law. And a counting board is an accumulation of several precincts with the same ballot form. So all the candidates' offices and proposals are the same. So a counting board may have 6 precincts in it, 1 precinct in it, 5 precincts in it. So the 501 precincts are filtered into 134 boards. So that's how the operation was run. So at this point, I would point you to Director Brader's report. He has indicated, I think, some very positive increases in the accountability that Detroit has brought to this process. And I'm going to be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the board members for Mr. Thomas?
Okay, my button is green. All right. Chris, it's good to hear you. Chris and I talked, it was just yesterday. It seemed like a week ago, Chris.
Yeah.
I went over a bunch of stuff with Chris, and I warned him out to ask a particular question. But for anyone to say that this election in November went smoothly, I suppose we can compare it to August, which was a total mess. You might say there's improvements, but smoothly is not accurate at all. So, Chris, our statute that we operate under, there's a sentence in there about certifying the statewide election, that we have a power to adjourn from time to time and await the receipt or correction of returns or for other necessary purposes. And we shall complete the canvass and announce determination no later than the 40th date after the election. Today's the 20th. So, Chris, what I told you I was going to ask you is, under what circumstances could there be out there that you would think you can delay for other purposes?
Well, first of all, part of the question you said you're going to ask is whether you could ever vote no on a certification. And
delaying is voting no for today.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I think that, first of all, the answer is, of course, you can't vote no. There is no in this circumstances. Each of you play a necessary role. You're at the pinnacle of Michigan's democracy. You're the end game of the statewide elections for 2020. Our system is a zero-sum operation. You got winners, you got losers. We don't have any ties. Everyone doesn't get a trophy. That's not the way it works. However, at the end of the season, after 5.5 million people have taken to the field and exercised their right to vote, we've had tens of thousands of our citizens have turned out to work in difficult and dangerous times. And over 1,600 county, city, and township clerks and their staff have conducted and prepared for this election. And the 83 boards of canvassers have canvassed this election. You, the Board of State Canvassers, representing the 2 major political parties, convene in a public meeting to make the results that are already widely known official. So your civility, which is so needed today, shows our citizens that a system they may take for granted works. Michigan election law does not need to tell you that yes is the only option, because without a yes, you don't have anything. There's no election, no winners, no losers, no beginning of Michigan's next chapter. So our law says you may adjourn to await returns and corrections to those returns. But of course, it doesn't say you can vote no and go home. So those who question the outcome, the remedy stage begins after you say yes. Recounts, audits, investigations are all out there waiting for you to act. The legislature is giving you a role in recounts, but clearly it is not giving you authority to conduct pre-certification audits. So Can you adjourn? Yes, you can adjourn.
I want to put you back
If
on
you
track
don't
here.
have, if you have the completed returns, I don't think you can adjourn. What else is there for a county to do? They have lost their jurisdiction. They can no longer canvass. You have got their statement as to what the certified votes are in their respective counties. So what would you be waiting for?
Okay, well, you're asking me questions, and I asked you the question. And Chris, it does say at the bottom of the sentence, shall complete our canvass and announce their determination no later than the 40th day. So what you're saying is those words shouldn't be in there. We should announce our certification of the election no later than the 40th day. Would that be correct?
No, I think that you're mandated to certify when you have the complete results. There's no reason to sit on it for 40 days. Because I would ask you, okay, if I can't ask you questions, I would rhetorically ask, well, what would you do for 40 days? I mean, what would you do for 40 days? You don't have authority to do an audit. So what would you do? I mean, why would you sit on something for 40 days when you
Chris, what you're
have
saying
everything you
then,
need?
There is no other necessary purpose. There is no other necessary purpose that we could have. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I'm not sure how you would suggest what that would be. Maybe somebody gets ill. Maybe two people get ill and you lose a quorum. I don't know. But I mean, yeah, those words are there. But
Chris,
what is the necessary
I
purpose?
warned you yesterday I was going to bring this up, and I think we got Chris's answer.
Okay, guys. I know, Vice Chair Langenfeld.
Good afternoon, Mr. Thomas. How are you? Oh, good afternoon, Mr. Thomas. How are you?
I'm very good. It's nice to see you.
Good. I think there's some important things you said here, and I think it's really important for us to clarify the board's role. I think one of the, big things out there is the fact that there's a lot of misunderstanding about this board's role and the power that we have, the authority that we have. You're pretty familiar with election law too, so I think you're a good person to do that. So I'm looking at Section 841 of the Election Code, and it basically says the Board of Canvassers shall canvass the returns and determine the result of the election. Okay? And I'm going to focus in on the word shall. I mean, this means must, right?
It means shall. I mean, the state Supreme Court has gotten into shall and made shall, yes.
So you would agree with me that this board has a legal duty, correct?
I would definitely agree with you.
So the law basically says we have a legal duty, or a clear legal duty, to canvass returns. Those returns are basically the certified copies from the counties, correct?
That is correct.
And I mean, are you aware, and I know you've got an extensive background, are you aware of any legal authority out there that allows us to review more than those returns as part of this certification process?
I am not. I mean, I have, been with you all when you certified numerous elections. And I have never experienced a time when, one, it's come up, or two, there's been any contemplation of going beyond the face of the certifications presented to the board.
So am I correct in saying, I mean, we're not a court here. We don't have judicial power. We don't have the authority to conduct a trial here on whether or not election fraud occurred. Am I correct?
You are correct. And the Court of Appeals has told this board in no uncertain times in the petition arena that they are a ministerial body required to follow the dictates of law and not a tribunal to decide legal matters or constitutional questions. And I would think they would say pretty much the same thing here, is that you're not a body to investigate fraud. You don't have the tools to do that. The statute doesn't give you the authority to mandate documents or compel testimony. So you can't really investigate fraud. I mean, the Secretary of State cannot even investigate fraud. She can investigate the conduct of elections based on what election officials do. But if the fraud is outside of that arena, that goes to police powers, not even to the Secretary of State.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions for Mr. Thomas from the board? Well, thank you, Mr. Thomas. I really appreciate you coming and speaking with us today.
It's my pleasure.
I do have another individual I'd like to bring on, and that would be Daniel Baxter, former Director of Elections for the City of Detroit. Mr. Baxter, can you hear us? I believe you might have to unmute.
Are we there?
I believe we can hear you now. Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Baxter.
good. Thank you.
Spell your first and last name, and the floor is yours after that.
Yes, my name is Daniel Baxter. That's D-A-N-I-E-L Baxter, B-A-X-T-E-R. I'd like to first and foremost thank you for the opportunity to come before this body and share information associated with the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election. As Chris mentioned, I was placed in charge of all activities associated with the tabulation of absentee ballots for the presidential election. After the primary election, City Clerk Janice Winfrey reached out to me to ask me whether or not I would be willing to assist in this monumental endeavor. I certainly was honored to accept that opportunity. And as such, the clerk and I, along with numerous staff members, along with the Office of the Secretary of State, along with the Wayne County Elections Department, we sat down and had a conversation in terms of what elements were needed in order to ensure more efficiency and accuracy associated with the tabulation of absentee ballots for the November election. And as a result of that conversation, we did a couple of things. One thing that we wanted to make sure was that we didn't run into some of the challenges that we ran into for the primary election. That being not having enough staff to man the operation and staff leaving without completing or tabulating all of the absentee ballots. And as such, we began to do a recruitment operation that included recruiting younger and more energetic Central Counting Board staff. We reached out to the Divine Nine, which are Black fraternities and sororities within metropolitan Detroit. We reached out to the ecumenical community, churches such as Triumph, Greater Grace, Second Ebenezer Church. We reached out to businesses such as Blue Cross and Blue Shield and other local businesses, staff from Wayne County Community College, as well as City of Detroit employees and folk from the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, as well as our everyday citizen. And as a result of our recruitment endeavor, we had more than 4,000 people who applied to assist us to ensure that we were able to tabulate all of the absentee ballots for the November election. Because we were in a season of a pandemic and to attract more professional staff, we upped the ante in terms of our payroll. We paid our inspectors $600 for the day and our supervisors $700 for the day. To ensure that no one was overworked or left before the ballots were tabulated, we implemented shifts on Monday, November 2nd, from 7 a.m. to p.m., on 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. On Tuesday, November 3rd, folk worked from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. On Tuesday, November 3rd, in the evening, people worked from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And then on Wednesday, folk worked from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. To ensure accuracy and efficiency, we also, as Chris mentioned, we implemented the electronic poll book. Also, we augmented training so that it was more effective. We did a hands-on operation where we employed all of our supervisors. They trained 8 to 10 hours to make sure that they understood every aspect of the operation. Part of their training was to report to the TCF Center and actually be trained alongside of those poll workers that they would be working with on election day. It was a hands-on operation in the sense that we actually allowed them to use the electronic poll book to follow every step as it relates to opening, processing, and closing. Each person understood every aspect of processing an absentee ballot, from your standard ballot to any ballots that you might run into that may have problems. We were excited because so many people participated in this particular process. And to process the anticipated high volume of absentee ballots, we also increased the use of our high-speed tabulators. From the primary election, we went from 18 high-speed tabulators to 25. And for the primary election, we also increased our adjudication stations from 9 to 13. We've trained and prepared for election day from Wednesday, September 23rd through Saturday, October 31st. And then came Monday, November 2nd. From November 2nd to November the 4th, from Monday to Wednesday, and all the way up until Thursday morning. It was perhaps one of the most exciting and engaging endeavors that I've ever had the opportunity to be a part of since working at the Department of Elections. You have to remember, I started working at the Department of Elections in 1985. One of my first jobs here was as a POC, which is the Political Organizations Coordinator down at the Central Counting Board. From 1985 to 2005, my main feature was to work at the Central Counting Board. And in 2005, I was in charge of every aspect of that operation. I've had an opportunity to witness so many changes in terms of elections. I've had the opportunity to go from punch card to electronic voting systems. I had the opportunity to witness a write-in candidate election that was an amazing feat. And in 2008, I had the opportunity to be a part of that entire operation where so many people engaged in the voting process for the first time in so many years in the city of Detroit. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to the experience that I had and many people had at the TCF Center on those particular days. It was a day of great pride, not only just for myself, but for those poll workers and for the city of Detroit at large. No matter what happened on election day, whether or not challengers shouted "stop the vote" in the TCF Center, whether or not they were violating social distancing rules, or whether they stood in the middle of the processing center without their mask on. Nothing, and I mean nothing, deterred our poll workers from being engaged. They stayed focused throughout that entire operation. And then on last week, when the Board of Canvassers, when the Wayne County Board of Canvassers decided to certify, and we're so glad that they did, I was proud that one of our supervisors had the opportunity to offer public comment during that particular exchange. And she explained the process from the beginning to the end with complete accuracy. So I was so excited to see that and to see her stand up and demonstrate the integrity of the process that was executed on November 2nd and 3rd. And in closing, I just want to share this with you. Every day since 1985, when you enter into the Department of Elections, on the wall is a quote from Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. And it says, "And that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth." Everything that we do here at the Department of Elections, whatever it is that we carry into the building, whatever it is that we have going on outside of the building, we never deal with that. We're always about a nonpartisan operation that is focused on making sure that every vote counts. I want to thank you for this opportunity to share with you. And if you have any questions for me, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
Is there any questions for Mr. Baxter?
Hi, Mr. Baxter. I think I was with you in the Cobo Hall basement. I was there in 10 and 12. And,
yes, sir.
I don't remember talking to me, but my first question is, after the election was over, was there any count board of several precincts that may be out of balance by up to 600 votes? Do you recall that?
Pardon me? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Okay, my question is, the count boards after the election, were any of them out of balance, one of which was up to 600 votes? Does that make any sense to you?
Well, I know that we had 3 counting boards that did not report as of Wednesday night. And those 3 counting boards were rerun during the canvass. And it would appear that the difference exceeded 600. So when the county reran those particular counting boards, they were processed and included in the official report.
So they were in balance at the end?
I know one balanced. The other 2 may not have been in balance at that particular time upon certification.
Okay, the electronic poll book, the supplemental poll book, the additional poll book list, whatever you want to call it, when was that finalized?
That was finalized on Election Day, on November 3rd.
November 3rd. And
so I'm sorry, let me go back. The electronic poll book was printed and reported or produced on Sunday night, which was November 1st. On November 2nd, when we began the pre-processing operation, we employed the electronic poll book.
Okay.
Then on November 3rd, what we did was we produced the supplementals in the event that any of the poll workers, when they were processing the absentee ballots, ran into any type of issues where that name was not in the electronic poll book. If the name was not in the electronic poll book, then they were responsible for looking that name up on the supplemental document. If the name was there, they were to check it off and then process the ballot in its standard manner.
So the supplemental poll book was the last poll book, the so-called list that was developed?
That is correct.
Okay, and is there any reason that the statement could be true that all these lists were delivered to the Wayne County Board of Canvassers 13 days after the election? Any truth to that?
No. I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Are you familiar with how the poll workers are hired?
Yes, I am. I'm familiar.
Are you familiar with the law that says that each major party should have one person of each party in every poll precinct?
Yes, I am familiar with that.
Okay, is it your opinion that we had 134 Republicans at the AV Comp Board on election night?
No, there were not 134 Republicans at the at the Central Counting Board on November 2nd, 3rd, or the 4th. There is a...
in your opinion, why wasn't the law followed, in your opinion?
Well, when we went to recruit Republican poll workers, we could not get the allotted number of poll workers to make sure that there were enough at each one of the tabulation stations or at each one of the central counting boards. And as such, we had to govern ourselves based upon standard operational procedures, which means that we continue to move forward with the tabulation of absentee ballots with the staff that we've received, recruited, and trained.
Well, Mr. Baxter, if somebody shows me a list of 100 people, Republicans, that applied to be poll workers to the AV Comp Board, and they were told it's full, we don't need them, and they are Republicans, does that make any sense to you?
I'm not aware of that.
Do you have any other questions, Norm?
No, I don't.
Is there any further questions from the board for Mr. Baxter? Thank you very much, Mr. Baxter.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to, the next person would be Jeff Timmer, who is a former member of the Board of State Canvassers.
All right. There, am I
Jeff?
on now?
Jeff, can you, I believe so. So Jeff, if you can spell and state your first and last name, and then the floor is yours.
Sure. Jeff Timmer, Jefftimmer. I will be very, very brief given the extensive testimony and questions and answers that we've already heard from the two previous speakers. I served on this board from 2009 to 2012 and served with two of the members sitting here before us today, and I know that they know their duty very well. If the board has all the required returns, it has no discretion. It has none. It has zero. The board must certify the results today. It is mandatory. Some have commented that today's meeting has heightened political impact. It does not. Rather, it is a routine ministerial function being performed here today, the same regular and predictable function that occurs after every election. Joe Biden won Michigan by a margin of more than 154,000 votes, a margin 15 times greater than the margin this board certified without fanfare 4 years ago. This election was not close. Neither was Gary Peters' defeat of John James. But whether the margin is 1 vote or 1 million votes is irrelevant to the legal obligations this board must fulfill today. Do your mandatory duty, certify Michigan's election results.
Is there any questions for Mr. Timmer?
Just briefly. Mr. Timmer, I just have a couple questions. and I don't want to be repetitive to what I already asked Mr. Thomas, but given your extensive experience on the board, I think it's also important to talk to you and kind of clarify the board's role a little bit more for members of the public. I agree with you. It's really all about the returns here today, what we received from the county. Are you aware of any legal authority, any authority in law, for us to go beyond those returns and to review anything else as part of the certification process here today?
I am not aware of any ability to do that, that there's any latitude to do that. My experience on the board was very clear, and there were times when, for instance, the board deadlocked on, say, petition language or the approval of a petition. And the mandamus actions were usually taken. The Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court issued an opinion and reminded us, sometimes very bluntly, that we had an obligation to do what was in the black letter of the law, that we did not have discretion. We did not have the luxury of inserting our opinions or what we thought should be the case, what we thought should be looked at, what we thought should be investigated. And so that was my experience.
Thank you.
Any other questions from board members? Thank you very much, Mr. Timmer, and thank you for your service on this board. Okay. The next person is Barb Byram, Ingham County Clerk. Okay. I'm actually going to move ahead to Susan Nash, Livonia City Clerk. And I just want to remind everyone, and thank you for joining us. I know that the times that we have right now are a little different because we are remote, but I just want to thank everyone for their time too. And it looks like we do have Susan. So Susan, if you can state and spell your first and last name and then your comments, please.
Susan Nash, SUSANNASH, Livonia City Clerk. I'm also the president of the Association of Wayne County Clerks. I would like to just briefly comment on how important it is for this vote to be certified. As Mr. Brader pointed out, we had record numbers of Michigan voices that came out to be heard, and they need to be heard. I'm not going to say there weren't mistakes, because I'm sure there were mistakes. And there were mistakes that were human error that shouldn't happen. As a clerk, I would like to see zeros on every one of my balance sheets. Unfortunately, we're not always going to get that. Perfection is not always going to be there. But I do believe the voices need to be heard. I also think there should be an audit. I'm all for an audit. I'm all for a random audit. I think we need our voters to feel safe and secure that their vote is going to be heard, that it's going to be counted, and it's going to be counted correctly. But we need to certify this election so we can move forward, so we can do an audit, so we can look into this, and we can let the voters know that everything was done, and everything was done as best as we could, and that we took care of them. And again, like I said, I just really wish this would be certified. From one of the largest communities, we doubled in absentee ballots. We had a difficult time getting people to work. And then all of a sudden we got a lot of people. When we were able to give hazard pay, then all of a sudden we had a lot of people willing to work. And I applaud them. I thank all of the people that came out to work. We went probably 300-400 people working election day for us in Livonia. That's huge. That's a huge undertaking. And I appreciate every one of them. I appreciate everyone in my staff. And I appreciate every clerk in this state that worked very hard so that the voters of this state could have their voices heard. Thank you.
questions? Thank you very much, Susan. Okay. And I'm going to say this very nicely. If I ever mispronounce people's names, my apologies beforehand. I have Michelle Anzaldi from Pittsfield Township.
Hello?
Hello, Michelle.
Hello.
You
Thank
can state and spell your first and last name, please.
My name is Michelle Anzaldi. That's Michelle. Anzaldi, it's Anzaldi. I am the clerk at Pittsfield Charter Township.
You can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. In trying to determine, what would be the most helpful thing to say here at this meeting, a lot of things come to mind. I think it's important that you guys certify the results because that is what is required from you. You have received the results and now you are required to certify them. This election was unprecedented, not like any other election we have ever had. The clerks and all clerks that I have known have had great deference, have had great dedication and commitment to this election process. This election was a very difficult one as we faced challenges that we have never had to face before with the pandemic. We worked countless of hours along with all of our election workers. And to discount all the work that we do every day when we are running elections, to discount that work and say that the process wasn't fair or transparent or accurate is, in my opinion, wrong, because all clerks have tried and will continue to try to make sure that every vote counts. This is so important for us, and we spend the majority of our time working on elections and election matters, and we are all concerned with the actions that have been coming about, questioning what we're doing when the only thing that we really truly want to do is have the fairest, an accurate, reliable, transparent election. And I think for the most part, that is what the clerks in the state of Michigan have done, along with all of their election workers. And I would ask that this board certify the results that were returned, and that we do, I also feel strongly that audits are important, and I feel like our state has been really good in the past and going forward with requiring audits, doing risk limiting audits. And this is all in order to ensure that every vote can be counted. We need to certify these results so that we can begin the audit process and look at ways to hold even more efficient, even more sensitive and critical functions in elections. So I thank you for this time. I respectfully ask, as a clerk and as a voter in Michigan, that you certify the results so that the voters in the state of Michigan are not disenfranchised and feeling that their vote is not going to count. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Is there any questions from the board members? Thank you so much. I know that we now have Barb Byram, the Ingham County Clerk. So we'll move to her next. Hello, Barb. I'm
Good
sure you
afternoon.
can hear us.
I can.
If you can state and spell your first and last name, please, and then the floor is yours.
Sure. My name is Barb Byrum, B-A-R-B, B-Y-R-U-M. I am the Ingham County Clerk. And thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm here to stand up for the 145,569 voters who voted in Ingham County, but also the over 5.5 million Michiganders who cast their votes earlier this month. I'm here to tell you in no uncertain terms that you must certify the results of the November general election. It is the job of the 83 county boards of canvassers, not the state, to certify the vote totals within their jurisdiction. The state does not get to do the county's job under state law. Anything other than certification is unlawful power grab and would mean a wholesale disenfranchisement of the millions of Michigan voters, including those right here in Ingham County. Further, if you are presented with a complete returns by the Secretary of State, you do not have the ability to postpone the certification. Your duties are ministerial and mandatory under Michigan election law. This assault on Michigan's democratic process has come from many directions over the last 3 weeks, but it all stems from the same source, President Trump. Now he is pressuring our elected and appointed representatives to bend to his will and commit acts that will be remembered as a subversion of the free and fair elections, the likes of which our state and our country has never seen before. It's been reported in the news that at least one of you is considering voting to not certify the election today. I find this shocking and disgusting. The time for political games is over. The eyes of our nation are on the four of you today. They are watching and they are waiting. A failure to certify these election results will signal to the country that democracy is dying in Michigan. If you choose today not to certify the November 3rd general election, not only will you be violating your oath of office, you will be effectively slapping each and every election official, precinct worker, election volunteer in the face and disenfranchising every Michigan voter, many of whom risk their health and safety to exercise their right to vote. Further, you will say to the world that Michigan is buying into idiotic and unfounded conspiracies. Michigan should stand proud. We have some of the safest and most secure elections in the nation. Organizations and responsible individuals from everywhere on the political spectrum agree. You must certify today. The election is over. Do your jobs and accept it. I have faith that you will follow the law. I believe that you know your role, you know what it is, and you will perform your duty as you took an oath to do, to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of this state, and to faithfully discharge the duties as a member of the State of Michigan Board of Canvassers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is there any questions from the board members? Okay, Norm.
Yeah, hi, Mrs. Byram. Barb, if one of the county certification processes is in question, and we're not sure exactly what happened in that county, do you think we have the right to inquire into that process?
I think as a member of the Board of Canvassers, you have the duty to certify.
So your answer is no?
You have the duty to certify. After state certification, a period will start, the clock will start to run for the opportunity for candidates to file for recounts. After that is over, there is the mandatory state audits. As a Board of Canvasser, you have a duty to certify.
Okay, your answer is no then, to me.
Is there any other questions? Thank you very much. I will. Okay. I have Chris Swope, Lansing City Clerk.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity. Hello?
Yeah, hi, Chris. If you can state and spell your first and last name, please.
Yes, Chris Swope, CHRISSWOPE. I'm the Lansing City Clerk.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to address the board today. Through this election process, we have learned a lot. As a local clerk, I found that we were dealing with issues we have never dealt with before. And one of the things that I found was that we asked for additional time from the state legislature, and we were given a small amount of additional time. We were given 10 hours on the day before the election. That was less than we asked for, and it was less than sufficient to deal with the number of absentee voters that we had. We have an audit process in Michigan that the legislature determined would be post-certification. So we need to have that audit, but we need the certification to move forward in order to get that. Other states, such as Georgia, have a pre-certification audit process. I went down and participated last week in that audit in Georgia because I felt it was important to verify the voting system that we have, which is the same one that is used in Ingham County and Wayne County. And the audit proved that the results were accurate. So we have a system in Michigan where we are not able to do that audit until after the certification. So let's move forward with the certification so we can get to that point of the audit. In the March primary, Mr. Schinkel, I believe your wife was a challenger in my absent voter counting board. And we got along great, and she learned a lot. And I thought it was a great process. Clerks across Michigan are working their hardest to make sure that every vote is counted. And your duty now is to certify those votes so that any other processes can take place afterwards. Again, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions from the board members? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could, oh, my light is still green. I forgot.
Sorry.
Under the clerks, I noticed that Clerk Winfrey's not on here. She's a critical witness, in my opinion. Is she out in the audience? Do you know?
It is too. I apologize. It does not look like I have her on the list.
Okay, well, Jonathan, she was one of the people I said we need to summons to have in front of us for this meeting. What's our status there?
Member Schinkel, the invitation was forwarded to the City of Detroit. My understanding is that Chris Thomas and Daniel Baxter joined. I don't believe that Clerk Winfrey was on the meeting.
I mean, was she summoned to be here?
She was invited.
I think she's a critical witness, gang, just so you know.
If I can have my attention of the board members really quick, I would like to go into a very quick recess, and my apologies about that. If you guys would allow us to go to recess for just a few minutes. Fine. Thank you very much. We are now back, and I have our next person to speak for us in front of us would be Laura Cox, Michigan Republican Chair. I see you, Laura. I'm waiting to see when we get unmuted. Waiting.
Unmute.
There we are. Okay. If you can state and spell your first and last name, and then the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. My name is Laura Cox, Lauracox. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I'm asking you to delay certification. There are too many questions that need to be answered regarding this election. Too many numerical anomalies and credible reports of procedural irregularities. We need to remove the distrust and the sense of procedural disenfranchisement felt by many Michigan voters in place. This vote will be certified and the will of the people will be upheld, but we need to ensure there is a fair and accurate vote first. This election had its issues. At every step of the election process has been stacked against Republicans, starting with the challenger process. Every election, the Michigan Republican Party chair signs credentials for thousands of Republicans who volunteer to observe and challenge the election counting process to uphold the integrity of the vote. This year, I was honored to perform that duty, and thousands showed up across the state. The majority of election officials treated all challengers, regardless of party, with dignity and respect, and let them participate meaningfully in the process. One location and one jurisdiction stood out above all others, being inhospitable and hostile to Republican challenges, the TCF Center. From the moment issues stated earlier today, the reaction from the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and partisan Democrats has been antagonistic, belligerent, and disrespectful. I appreciate the hard work of election officials, but I also will not let Republican challengers be disrespected and shut out of the process. And last week, the Wayne County Board of Canvassers noticed significant problems with the election counting process across the county. When the Republican canvassers asked the state to take a little more time to investigate, they were treated again with hostility and intimidation. But rather than treat those threats seriously, many Democrat elected officials looked to further intimidate and threaten these officials. Election after election, we have had the same issues. We certify and then forget until the next election. If folks are proud of a 71% out of balance count in our largest community in the state, then we have very different ideas. This is why I implore the Board of Canvassers to provide meaningful review of Wayne County. In the future, I would ask this board to do three things. First, please use your platform to ensure that all challengers and participants in the election process are treated equally, regardless of their party. Second, please use your platform to end all threats and intimidation to Republicans and all parties. All deserve to have an election with integrity where every legal vote is counted. Third, please demand more from the election counting process so all questions can be answered to ensure fair and accurate vote. I ask you to do that today. I will continue to stand up for Republicans and demand that they be respected. And I will demand a meaningful review of the votes for the people of Michigan. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there questions? The board members? Well, thank you very much for, okay, Norm, go ahead.
Laura, you've been around for a while, your husband too, and you heard the testimony from some of the witnesses, Chris Thomas being one of them, that we have no choice today, that we have no power to order an audit, even though it appears to be a bit in conflict with statutory language. Specific to the testimony earlier today, do you have any comments on that?
Well, I believe we have the opportunity to request a review, a meaningful review. We need to look at the Wayne County results, and I think that you have time in the safe harbor limit dates to make that happen. So I believe that that should happen.
Any further questions? Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Laura, and I hope you have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a next one, and if I've mispronounced names, I'm going to try my best. Charles Spees, who is the attorney for John James.
Hello.
Charles, you can hear us?
I can.
Okay. State and spell your first and last name, and then the floor is yours.
Charles Spies, Charles Spies. My name is, I just said, Charlie Spies, and I represent the John James for U.S. Senate campaign. Let's start by taking some issues off the table here, and perhaps that'll let us dial down the hysteria and straw man arguments. First of all, democracy is not dying, and our position is not that this election shouldn't be certified. So all of the rhetoric, legal arguments, and unfortunately even threats from public officials in Michigan about the board having to certify are not relevant here. Those are straw men. Our position is that the board should, perhaps even must, certify, but it should only do that when it is confident that the results that it is certifying are accurate. By definition, and I'm talking Webster's, certification means, quote, to attest as being true. And this board has not only the ability, but the obligation to do everything in your power to confirm that the results you are certifying is true. The vice chairman is correct that you're limited to the review of returns, but nobody has presented legal authority saying that you cannot conduct an audit or independent review of Wayne County's AV canvas to determine the accuracy of those returns that you have in front of you and you are being asked to sign and attest to as being true. I am not aware of, and nobody has presented any court cases limiting such authority for you in the context of an election canvass. You also have time to get this certification of accurate results right. Michigan law, that's MCL 168-842-1, required you to meet today for the purpose of canvassing and determining the results of the election. The law does not, however, require that the statewide canvass be certified in this same time frame. 842.1 expressly grants you, as part of your role to determine the results of the election, the power to adjourn from time to time for other necessary purposes. So as long as you complete the canvass, then announce your determination no later than the 40th day after the election, you are in full compliance with the law. We're asking you to comply with the law and use the powers granted to you to do what Secretary of State Benson has refused to do and take up the bipartisan cry from Wayne County for an audit or some sort of pre-certification review of their results, and specifically of the out-of-balance AV precincts in Detroit. As recently as 7 days ago, there was bipartisan outrage about the election administration catastrophe I'm using Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist's expression there, the catastrophe in Detroit. If we use the Wayback Machine to go to August of this year, 72% of Detroit's AV precincts were out of balance, and the Wayne County Board of Canvassers was outraged and passed a unanimous bipartisan resolution requesting the state election monitor an investigation, as well as asking Secretary of State Benson to appoint someone to oversee it. Even Detroit Mayor Duggan reached out to Secretary Benson then in August to get the out of balance AV precinct problem fixed immediately. He vowed that we cannot have a recurrence of these problems in November. Now comes the November general election, and while we, the James campaign, other nonpartisan groups, and Republicans have presented voluminous sworn affidavits of problems, I'm going to focus here on the issue that everyone believes is the metric for whether there's a problem that needs to be audited, whether there are out of balance percentage of AV precincts. And remember, in August, that number was 72%. And Democrats, as well as Republicans, demanded an investigation to fix the problem. Well, the problem wasn't fixed. The Wayne County canvass showed that over 70% of AV precincts in Detroit were out of balance yet again. And as an aside, please don't be distracted by Director Brader's attempt to cover for his boss, Secretary Benson's inaction and or lack of results by changing the statistical reference for success in Detroit. He's now talking about new statistics about not quite as out of balance as before and possibly recountable, which apparently shows some improvement, but they aren't relevant to the problem everyone has agreed to focus on for the past few months, AV precincts in Detroit. Unfortunately, the Wayne County canvass last week showed that over 70% of AV precincts in Detroit were once again out of balance. As a result of this problem, the Wayne County Board again asked you for help, passing a resolution demanding a comprehensive audit of all unexplained precincts in Wayne County. This resolution was introduced by the Democrat vice chairman of the board and gained unanimous bipartisan approval. The question before you now is whether you ignore that request and simply certify something that you know to be wrong, or if you take the common sense approach of adjourning this meeting for the necessary purpose of conducting an audit, or call it a review. I don't care what you call it, whatever you need to call it, so the post-certification audit statute isn't applicable. But we respect the request you do something to get a grasp on what happened in Wayne County so you're certain of the accuracy of what you're certifying. This can be done quickly. Georgia did a full hand recount in about a week. There's no reason this can't be completed well before the first December 8th deadline to submit Michigan's electors. The people you've heard from today, Director Brader, Chris Thomas, Mr. Baxter, were involved in the process that's implicated here. And while I respect them all and appreciate their hard work, they also have vested interest in defending their actions. The review we're requesting you conduct should be overseen by an independent senior statesman, perhaps Senator Joe Lieberman, who upon completion will either instill confidence in Wayne County's results, or if problems are identified, then certify the correct results by December 8th, but also then leave us with a roadmap for future reforms. Thank you for your attention.
Are there any questions from the board members? Vice Chair.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So you'd agree with me that this board only has the duties and powers given to it by law, right? I mean, we only have the powers that the law provides. Correct?
Sure.
And the law regarding certification gives us a clear duty, doesn't it?
Can you clarify which duty you're referring to?
Well, the law says the Board of Canvassers shall canvass the returns and determine the result of the election. I mean, that's kind of really what our job is here today. It's canvassing the returns that have been certified by the counties, right?
Yes, Mr. Vice Chairman, the accuracy of those results.
Well, I mean, I've had a pretty good chance to look at the law over the last few days, as you can imagine. And I mean, there's nothing in the law that gives me the authority, and then correct me if I'm wrong, there's nothing in the law giving me authority to request an audit as part of this certification process, correct?
Nothing expressly gives you that authority, and nothing expressly says you can't do it. I would respectfully suggest that if you take the rubber stamp approach, that you are not allowed to have any discretion, that makes your job meaningless. They might as well just send the paperwork to the Secretary of State and have her stamp it with a stamp. I don't believe that's why you're there. I believe you and the members of this board are smart people who want to make sure what you are certifying is accurate, and that's consistent with the language of the statute.
But I mean, again, we only have the powers and duties given to us by law, right? I mean, I've reviewed the law here. It's not complicated. It's very simple. We're required to canvass the returns and determine the results. I've reviewed every section. I haven't found anything about an audit. I found nothing about authority for us to delay certification because we're waiting for more accurate results. I found nothing about making certification contingent on an audit. I have found nothing that gives us the authority to review complaints of fraud. I mean, I think the law is pretty clear here. And again, this board has such limited authority. I don't see anything where we're given the authority to act as a court or act as a prosecutorial agency. We are a simple board that's tasked with reviewing these returns and certifying them. Am I wrong?
Yes, Mr. Vice Chairman, you are wrong. I respectfully suggest that you look at 168-842-1, which requires you to ascertain and determine the result of an election. That's the language of the statute. You have the power.
Based on these returns, though, and nothing else. I mean, I've reviewed all the other sections. There's nothing that mentions an audit. There's nothing mentioning a review. There's nothing mentioning our authority to review complaints of fraud. It's limited to ascertaining the results of an election based on these returns or the statements from the counties. And there's nothing else in these sections of law that say we can do otherwise.
In order, Mr. Vice Chairman, in order to make your argument, you had to ignore what I just read to you, the language of the statute, and add some language based upon the result of the returns. You added that language. That's not in the statute. I suggest that you have the ability to ascertain and determine the results of the election, and that's consistent with the provision giving you the right to abstain and take the time to take for any necessary actions to help you determine that. So that you can't, there would be no reason to have that provision for extra time if you were just a rubber stamp.
Again, there is nothing in the law that says we have the authority to do the things you've requested, correct?
I respectfully disagree. I just read you the section that says your job is to ascertain and determine the results of an election. There is nothing that restricts your ability to do that.
Well, actually, it says where you shall canvass the returns and determine the results of the election. Okay, election based on those returns. There's nothing else in law. And I mean, we can agree to disagree, but I think the law is on my side here. Our duty is very simple, and it's a duty. We have no authority to request an audit, to delay or block certification, to review inaccuracies that happened at the local level. Those results have been certified. Our duty is to look at those certified results, look at the math, and then certify. That the statute couldn't be more clear.
I respectfully suggest that if you believe those results are accurate in front of you, then your position makes sense. If you, however, like the Wayne County Board of Canvassers and like this board in just a few months ago in August, think that it's a problem to have over 70% of AV precincts out of balance, then those results in front of you are not necessarily accurate. And you have not only the ability, but the duty to look into those to ensure what you are certifying is accurate.
We're going to have to respectfully disagree on that because I find no language in the law saying that at all. And regarding adjournment here, I mean, I will agree with you. We have the ability to adjourn, but we can't create out of thin air an adjournment. I mean, we have to have some authority to adjourn. And there's nothing here in the law that I'm finding where we have the authority to say we are going to delay for an audit again. We're going to delay to conduct a review of the election. We don't have that authority at all.
I think we may respectfully disagree again. I would refer you to 168-842-1, which specifically says you have the power to adjourn from time to time for necessary purposes. So if you believe that it is necessary, as in your role as certifying the accuracy of the results, for there to be additional time to look into what happened in Wayne County, then this statute applies.
But we can't create that necessity out of thin air. Again, we have to have legal authority to do it.
I consider the statute to be authority.
Do you have any further questions? Okay. Is there any further questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Spees.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure we do have City Clerk Janice Winfrey on Zoom. Okay, so we will bring up Detroit City Clerk Janice Winfrey. Hello, Ms. Winfrey. I see you're still on mute, and
I should be off mute now?
You are off mute now. If you can state and spell your first and last name, and then the floor is yours, Ms. Winfrey.
Janice Winfrey, JANICE WINFREY, Detroit City Clerk. Just to let you know ahead of time, I cannot be here long. I am not working. I have a medical situation that I'm dealing with that's dire, but I do want to allow the opportunity or have the opportunity to just remind people that the Detroit Department of Elections, the Detroit City Clerk, and the offices in the office is a nonpartisan entity. My charge is to administer the election process, ensure that voters know when election day is, and to ensure that they know where they go and vote on election day. In doing such, we've done everything to ensure that our process is open, that our process is transparent, and that it is administered in the spirit of professionalism. To that end, during this pandemic, where Detroit was considered a hotspot at one time, we went to great lengths and great measures to recruit and hire poll workers that were off work because of them being furloughed. So we had a different level, a professional level of poll workers. We extended training significantly. All of our supervisors were trained 8 hours for 3 days. And I'm talking across the board as it relates to our poll workers. We allowed our poll workers at TCF to work in shifts so that they wouldn't be as tired, so they wouldn't have to work 18, 20, 24-hour days, and less mistakes were made accordingly. And then we implemented the e-poll book, which is a laptop to ensure that poll workers don't have to copy information down, but they can hit the scan bar and the information is uploaded to ensure accuracy. We do all this so that we can eliminate as much human error as possible. But as humans, we all make mistakes. Please raise your hand if you've never made one. We've all made mistakes. And to that end, if our laws would allow for human error, therefore being able to recount every ballot every time upon request, we wouldn't have to have these long deliberations to do your ministerial act of certifying the canvas of returns. We wouldn't have this if only our laws were reflective of errors that humans make. The only way that you'll show the purity of the process is by allowing for a recount of every canister upon request, regardless of whether someone made a mistake or transposed numbers or not. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate the work that you all do.
Ms. Winfrey, I know, is there questions from the board members? Mr. Schenkel.
Hi, Mrs. Winfrey. If you recall, we had a phone conversation a couple weeks after the August primary. And,
yes, sir.
One of the topics that came up was having the Republican and Democrat each in each poll pursuant to state law. Mr. Baxter testified earlier today that can't find Republicans to hire, is what I put in my notes. So he said no Republicans applied. Now I've got a list of 50 to 100 Republicans that did apply, and we're told we're full. So that is, my information is contrary to Mr. Baxter's testimony. And I know you were right in the middle of this saying just have them apply on our website. I mean, did you have enough Republicans apply to be poll workers?
So to answer your question, Mr. Baxter was incorrect if he said we could not find any. We did have Republican poll workers, and we did reach out. Was it difficult? Yes. But after we got the word out, Republican poll workers begin to apply. And we had a great number of them. I don't know the exact number by heart, but we had quite a few. However, we did have to turn away poll workers, regardless of their classification, if it was too late when they responded. And that's what happened a lot of times. The training process is extensive and quite involved. And for you, and I have many, and I have it because they text me or they will send me a request email and the like. So I have every last one of them. And it was 2 weeks and less until election day. It's not enough time to properly train and hire and bring them aboard. So those poll workers, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just going to say the list of people I had that applied that are Republicans, you said must have applied too late. And as there were people at Global Hall informally asking the different counting tables, any Republicans at this table, the response was no every time, or it'd be fine when send them over. The counting tables didn't seem to think they had any Republicans. But what you're saying right now is that you had one Republican in every precinct in Detroit. Is that what you're telling me?
That is not what I said. I said that we had Republicans. We had Republicans that worked with us. All of those, we did have some at the precinct. How many at each precinct? I don't have that information before me. I'm just leaving the hospital, Mr. Schenkel. I didn't even know I was going to have to do this. I wasn't supposed to have to do it. I have a dire medical emergency that I'm dealing with in my home. So excuse me that I'm not prepared with the numbers. But no, I'm not saying that we had one at each county board. I'm not saying that we had one in each precinct, but I am saying we hired a significant number of Republican poll workers, those that applied in a timely fashion, just like any other political party that applied in a timely fashion where we were hiring. We hired them, we trained them, and we put them and we assigned them to their precinct or TCF. What you will find, Mr. Schenkel, what you will find oftentimes is that people are not willing to admit in front of other crowds of people what their political party is, and that's their business.
Okay, the law requires you to hire a Republican per precinct. Do you believe the law was followed?
I can tell you this, that we did everything in our power to ensure that requirement was met. And let me say this to you, Mr. Schenkel. This election was not special for us in order to ensure that. We ensure that for every election, every time. And when I go to the precincts and see the poll workers, and I just thank them all. The ones that came from Ann Arbor that worked with us, I've met some. Ones that came from Livonia, I met some that work. I don't know their political party. At that time, I don't care. I'm just grateful that they decided to work with us, go through the training, and be a part of the process.
Okay, but on your application, when somebody applies to be a precinct worker, they put down what party they affiliate with. Is that true?
Yes, yes, and yes,
So
some
you
of
would
them
know
do.
today then.
Excuse me, I didn't finish. I didn't finish the answer. Yes, that question is on there, and some people mark it off and others do not.
Well, if they don't mark it off, then they're not a Republican or a Democrat then.
Well, if they don't mark it off, I don't say that. If they don't mark it off, I say they just didn't answer the question. But that doesn't mean that we can't hire them.
Well, you can hire them, but they don't fill the slot as the Republican for the precinct then. Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Winfrey, for joining us, and I hope everything is okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You all, please be safe and happy holidays.
Okay. Going to, when we're ready, yep, we're going to go to Mary Ellen Growitz, attorney for Joe Biden. Give us a few more moments. Just a few minutes, just a moment. And thank you again for everyone who is joining us today for our Michigan Board of State Canvassers meeting. And I did not have my microphone on, and I hope you guys could hear all of that. I apologize. So we are going to bring Monica Palmer, Chair of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers.
Good afternoon. I was just on the call to answer any questions. I do not have any additional statements. You've all seen what happened at our Board of Canvassers meeting and have had access to my affidavit. Yes.
Monica, I do need you to state and spell your first and last name.
Monica Palmer,
Go ahead.
MONICA PALMER.
And I do know I have Board Member Schenkel had a question for you.
Sure.
Okay?
I might have two.
Oh, no,
Hi,
it's okay,
Monica. It's Norm Schenkel. We've talked on the phone, Monica and I. She goes through for months ago, and I saw your affidavit that you filed, and I'm going to start with just asking that during your Tuesday deadline to certify for Wayne County, you initially had a tie, so the motion was defeated. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then after that motion, there was public comment taken. And then tell me what happened that caused you to go back and have another motion made.
Vice Chair Kinlock pulled me aside for a discussion and offered a solution of an audit on those unbalanced, unexplained precincts throughout Wayne County. In the heat of the moment, I should have realized that the law does not allow for that audit to happen before your certification. Unfortunately, I did not put the two together in the stress of the moment, especially with the public commentary. And in a good faith effort of relying on the information that Vice Chair Kinlock gave me, we moved forward with the motion. Because my understanding with a comprehensive independent audit, hopefully we would be able to find the explanations that we didn't have for those precincts and absentee counting boards. And in my view, that solution would satisfy what we needed to certify the canvass. If I had been a little bit more on my feet and realized that audit couldn't be completed, I would have not voted for that motion.
Monica, when your Vice Chair counterpart suggested an audit, did he say he had any conversations with anybody that was going to do the audit?
He said that he had confirmation from Governor Whitmer that audit would take place.
Okay. Do you have the minutes of your meeting from last Tuesday?
I received them shortly before this meeting began.
Are they accurate in your opinion, the minutes that you're looking at?
I have not had a chance to review the entire document yet.
Do you recall, as part of the motion to certify, that someone made a motion to reconsider the vote by which the certification failed before they made the motion to certify?
No, there was no motion to reconsider.
And are you mandated to be guided by Robert's Rules of Order?
My understanding after doing a little research is that there is no distinction of what rules we need to use. And upon further review, I believe that if I was going to bring that up, it would have had to been done at the time.
So my last question is that I think, I don't know about my Democrat colleagues, but I know Aaron and I have received quite a few comments, outright threats, nasty emails, telling me my family's at risk. I had one person even suggest, Shinkley, you got to vote yes to certify for the safety of your family. So we've been through that. And I think you and Mr. Hartman went through the same type of thing. Tell us about what you went through.
Well, lots of public comment with harsh words. There was a state rep-elect who brought up my daughter and on public comment listed what town I live in and what school my daughter goes to. I have received text messages with graphic photos of naked dead women, and then a photo of my daughter letting me know that that's what's going to happen to my daughter, calling me a terrorist and saying that my entire family should be fearful for their lives.
Okay. It sounds a little more graphic than I was prepared to go. I wasn't that graphic. No one sent me pictures of my family. And Mr. Hartman, I can assume, would probably say similar things. These threats impact your decision-making process in any way?
the 2 hours of public comment did throw me for a loop. Like I said, with the conversation with Vice Chair Kinlock, had I had my wits about me a little more, I would have realized that offer of the audit was not going to get us to where we needed to be to have the answers on those unexplained balances. During the canvass, we had absentee counting boards where the number in the poll book for the voter list did not match the number on the statement out of the tabulated total. And we had to receive corrected poll lists from the clerk's office. Some of those did not show up until the day before the certification. And I've got some questions as to why I wasn't able to review the precincts that were updated and corrected and came out balanced, or the ones that remained unbalanced, and possibly with explanation from those updated lists. And to further go.
If I can interrupt you for a second, I asked Mr. Baxter about those updated lists showing up to the board, your board of canvassers, the night before you're voting, and he didn't acknowledge that. Tell me what happened with those supplemental lists.
There was a gray tote delivered filled with manila envelopes with updated poll lists the afternoon before certification.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You can finish the previous thought. Okay. Monica, thank you for coming on. I'm sorry you had to go through what you went through, as well as any other appointed official in the state of Michigan, if that happened to them. It's outrageous and should not occur. But it's our new society. Whoever threatens the most seems to think they're going to win. I'm done, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nagel. And I'm very, and I do, I speak on behalf of the board, very sorry for what you've occurred through this. It's very unfortunate and it's not appropriate at all. But I want to thank you for your time today and answering some questions from the board members. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to double check if Mary Ellen is on.
I am, I hope.
I hear.
Okay. Okay, let me...
Wait for one moment. We're having a little bit of a technical in the back.
My video to work.
You'll have to start your video.
I'm sorry, what? I'm trying.
Yeah, you'll have to hit the video link, the video box in the, I believe it's probably the lower left-hand corner.
Right, I'm doing that.
And yeah,
oh, my technical incompetence here. I'm trying to start my video, but it is not starting.
Mary Ellen, just give me 1 second. I want to make sure that our court reporter is okay if we just do audio, and if everyone else is okay with that. Okay. Marcy, can you hear? All right. So Mary Ellen, if you can start, state and spell your first and last name.
Okay, I will speak, and if you can get my video to work. Mary Ellen Gurwitz, Maryen, 2 words, Gurwitz, Gurewitz. I speak on behalf of the Michigan Democratic Party, which I am privileged to represent, and as a Detroiter. John James, twice failed candidate for the office of United States Senator, comes before this board asking that it reach its duty to certify the results of the November 3rd, 2020 election. Mr. James's letter is simply the latest assault on the integrity of the Detroit Election Administration, an assault carried out with 6 frivolous lawsuits. Michigan courts denied the requested relief in 3 of these suits. They refused to enjoin the counting of ballots in Detroit, refused to order an audit of Wayne County results, prior to the Wayne County Board of Canvassers certification and refused to enjoin the Wayne County certification of results. The other 3 lawsuits filed in federal court were each voluntarily dismissed. Yet Mr. James asks this board to do what the courts would not do and what this board may not do. He parroted the assertions of Ronna McDaniel and Laura Cox that there were irregularities and anomalies in election administration in the Detroit Absent Voter County Board. Not only were these claims brought and rejected in court, they were thoroughly examined in the press and demonstrated to be spurious. But they are more than that. They are part of a racist campaign directed by soon-to-be former President Trump to disparage the cities in this country with large Black populations, including Detroit, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee. Trump and his allies have made repeated and baseless assertions that the votes cast in these cities are fraudulent and illegitimate, that Black majority cities are corrupt, that the election administrators are dishonest cheaters, that they have conspired to falsify the vote counts so as to deprive Trump and James of electoral success. Trump seeks to disenfranchise Black voters, and John James joins him. Has he no sense of decency or shame? That there has been a clear and concerted attempt to discredit the Detroit election results is best illustrated by the claim that this is about unbalanced precincts. It is widely Yes.
I apologize. We are having a little bit of audio difficulty, so they have a remedy for that.
Okay.
So I believe there's a number. So if you can, I don't know, we will need you. I don't want you to say it. No, I'm just trying to, if you can email your, if you can email your number to Adam for copy, then we can have you on audio with the phone.
Okay.
Or now we can hear, hold on.
Can you hear me now?
Whatever you just did, we can hear you now.
Okay, I didn't do anything, but what would you like? Can you hear me now?
Yes, Mary, and just keep on going. You're good.
Okay.
Sorry.
I will back up a little bit and say that there has been a clear and concerted attempt to discredit the Detroit election results. It's best illustrated by the claim that this is about unbalanced precincts. It is widely recognized that precincts are unbalanced all over the state and the country. The lack of balance does not affect the tabulation of votes and does not impact certification. That the Republican efforts are motivated by racism is best illustrated by the conduct of Republican canvasser Monica Palmer, from whom you just heard. At the meeting of the Wayne County Board of Canvassers, she suggested a motion to certify all of Wayne County except Detroit, despite the fact that the percent of unbalanced county boards exceeded 50% in Dearborn, Livonia, Canton Township, and Redford Township. Why single out Detroit? It was obvious to the many people who spoke in that public comment period, and it must be obvious to John James. Detroit is 80% Black, while Livonia is 95% white. John James is joining in the calumnies of Donald Trump, Ronna McDaniel, Laura Cox, and Monica Palmer. That he has joined in these racist claims will not be forgotten. Thank you.
Is there any questions from the board members? Well, thank you very much, Mary Ellen. I apologize that we've had some technical audio issues, but I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Board members, we are, I'm looking at time, I'm looking at our list. So I'd like to, at this point, we've talked to our election clerks and such. So with the permission of the board, I want to go to our 3 minute, possibly 2 minute for public comment. Unless there's no issues. Okay. I can go to 2.
Well, I think most people have been holding it to 2.
Yeah.
I think 3.
3? Okay, so we will go forward, and Adam, we are going to put the timer in just for efficiency, and for our anyone who is speaking, we are going to hold to that 3 minutes. When you hear that timer, I will let you know that your time is ended, and then we will go on to our next public speaker. So let's go to former State Senator Patrick Kolbeck.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, thank you for the opportunity to address the State Board of Canvassers, the Michigan Department of State. Gosh, excuse me.
It's okay. We can hear you. Just for the record, please state your first and last name, and then your 3 minutes will start.
All right, first name Patrick, last name Kolbeck, C-O-L-B-E-C-K.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you for this opportunity to address the State Board of Canvassers. The Michigan Department State Bureau of Elections specifies that the purpose of canvassers is to verify the proper completion of records related to the election. The very process of canvassing referred to in MCL 168.842.1 is a form of an audit if performed with any degree of integrity. I understand that you're under tremendous peer pressure from those who falsely assert that there is no evidence of election process subversion. They earnestly seek your issuance of a rubber stamp certification of this election. I understand you're also under pressure from people such as myself who have actually taken the time to review almost 200 affidavits attesting to election process subversion impacting the integrity of election records in the city of Detroit alone. We seek a substantive, truly independent audit of both the paper and electronic records pertinent to the chain of custody before considering the question of certification. In support of my perspective, I share the following pertinent information. I served 2 terms as Michigan State Senator for the 7th District in Wayne County. I served as Vice Chair of the Senate Elections and Government Reform Committee. I am a certified Microsoft Small Business Specialist and very familiar with computer network configurations. I served as poll challenger certified by the Election Integrity Fund from 5 p.m. on November 3rd to 5:30 p.m. on November 4th at the Detroit AV County Board. I was physically present for 3.5 hours at the Wayne County Board of Canvassers meeting in Detroit on November 17th, where I witnessed that the election results were not certified. In order to ensure that a proper completion of election records has been accomplished, it is critical that there is a clear chain of custody maintained for the election. If any single link in this chain has been broken, there is no proper completion of election records and the results of the election are not certifiable. In the interest of time, I will focus only on 2 links in the chain of custody for this election, but I can provide evidence that many others that have been broken during this election cycle. Link number 1 is a qualified voter file. The Michigan qualified voter file contains 8.1 million registered voters, but a rudimentary demographics analysis demonstrates that only 7.8 million would be of voting age. This means that we have at least 300,000 more people on our voting rolls than we should have. In Ann Arbor alone, there are 114,375 registered voters, yet only 92,222 of voting age. Furthermore, the official vote results for Wayne County shows 0 registered voters against a tally of 172,337 votes. Breakage of this fundamental link in the chain of custody subverts the integrity of all links downstream, including the vote tally, no matter how diligent county and municipal clerks are in the execution of their duties. Link number 2 is the vote tally itself. I can personally attest to a break in the chain of custody for vote tallies due to visible Ethernet connections between tabulators, adjudicators, and local data center workstations, including evidence of internet connectivity at the Detroit AV County Board, where 172,337 votes were reported as tabulated. If the vote tally link in the chain of custody is broken, we cannot have faith in accurate election results due to the significant breaches in the chain of custody.
Your time is done, and I will have to
not
mute
only
you.
the
Okay,
I'm
I'd
sorry.
like to ask a question.
Okay. Would you like to? Fine. All right.
Okay, Mr. Kolbeck, Where'd you go?
One,
I don't need to look at him, I suppose. It would be nice. Yeah, Mr. Colbeck, Senator Norm Schenkel here.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, that was timed out to 3 minutes exactly beforehand, so I don't know when you started your clock.
It's 3 minutes. Listen, Senator, you were talking about your observations where you believe a tabulator was connected to the internet.
Absolutely.
This is part of the accusations against Dominion, which haven't been brought up at all today. But with your observations, just paraphrase for us what you think was going on.
Well, first of all, people should know that the actual Dominion manual for their election officials on site for IT support staff specified an Ethernet connection for their tabulators. So the first question that I asked Chris Thomas when I got on that floor, I wanted to know about the chain of custody regarding vote tallies. I wanted to know how they were going to transport the vote from each one of those tabulators up the chain. And he said he did not know. This is a state election director for 2 decades, right? He's been promoted as their star witness for everything elections related. And he told me he did not know the fundamental transformation of chain of custody around vote tallies. So the fact that these tabulators were networked together to routers, to the adjudicators, to the local data center, which was controlled by officials like Chris Thomas and Nick Iconicon with Dominion, is a very serious concern. Even if it wasn't connected to the internet, that local data center controlled the vote tallies for 134 AV counting boards. They could modify it any way they wanted to because they had direct access to those tabulators via that central stage. They were networked together. There's physical connections on there. I will attest that it was connected to the internet as well, because all you had to do was walk around all the different terminals and you can see the internet connectivity icon on all of them. When you open that up to a wide area network like that, you immediately breach the chain of custody. You may as well ripped off the seal on the envelope in a flash drive when you're transferring it from a precinct to the clerk's office. It's the same thing that happens because you can hack into a election system in a matter of seconds.
Okay, and my last question is a follow-up. I'm sure you brought this up.
I did. I asked.
Ethernet cord from tabulators to second locations, and did you get any satisfactory response?
Well, I got a direct response. Daniel Baxter told me point blank, no, they're not connected to the internet. Then I went to David Nathan, former state representative. He said specifically, no. When I pressed on him, I said, all you have to do is roll your little mouse over that cursor on that little icon in the bottom right-hand corner, and it'll tell you in words saying this is connected to the internet. And he refused to do so and said, you'll have to trust me. Well, I'm sorry. The job of the poll challenge is to make sure that we ensure integrity of this election. There was nothing that would have been modified around election results by him mousing it over. It only brings me to the conclusion that they are attempting to subvert the election and hide the fact that they were doing so. Those computers were connected to the internet. As a minimum, they were connected to that local data center and via routers that I can attest to. And I've done a network topology diagram depicting that.
Senator Colbeck, thank you for your interest, time, and effort you put in trying to improve the election process. Thank you.
Thank you.
yes.
Senator Colbeck,
Yes.
if you're alleging fraud in this election, have you taken it to the Attorney General, your evidence?
I've submitted my affidavits to lawyers, and we've moved it up the chain that way. And you'll notice that when a lot of people from the Democratic Party are refuting the Republican poll challengers, stating that they were refuted in court, we were never getting an opportunity to cross-examine the witnesses on the other end, like Chris Thomas. So
have you submitted evidence of fraud to the Attorney General's office?
I can submit it to anybody you'd like me to submit it to. I've submitted it to our lawyers, and it is being introduced as lawsuits.
If there is an accusation of fraud, this board is not equipped nor authorized to investigate fraud. It should appropriately be sent to the Attorney General's office.
Your job is to ensure the proper certification of this election and the proper execution of processes related to election integrity. And I can demonstrate that the chain of custody was breached on multiple occasions in multiple links. That, from a Board of Canvasser perspective, is your raison d'etre. You're supposed to ensure the accuracy of the election. And the only way you can do that is by maintenance of a chain of custody. And that has not happened in this election.
Is there any further questions from Mr. Colbeck? Thank you, Mr. Colbeck. We'll go to State Representative Lori Polhutsky, and we'll start the 3 minutes once we get connections through.
Hi there. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Lori, we can. Please state and spell your first and last name, and then the 3 minutes will begin.
My name is Lori Polhutsky, Laurie I'm not going to take up too much of everyone's time. I know that you guys have more than a full agenda and a lot of people before and after me. I'm just going to, again, underline the importance of what's being done here today and just say that there is a clear legal duty for the board to certify this election. You know, there's been a tremendous amount of work done by our clerks, their volunteers. We've heard from many of them. And I think that the insinuation that there is anything that, you know, was done improperly is just sowing doubt in our electoral system, and it has no place here. So I want to thank you all for the work that you've done so far. I know that this has been acrimonious, to say the least, but you know, there is a job to be done today, and there is a clear legal duty. So I am just asking that the board certify the election today. Thank you.
I need to put my mic back on, and my apologies. If you could please state and spell your first and last name, and then their 3 minutes will begin then.
Sure. My name is Mari Manoogian, spelled MariManoogian. Thank you, Chairwoman Bradshaw and members of the State Board of Canvassers. I, like my colleague, Representative Polhutsky, will be brief. There's been a lot of comment that's already been made, and I know there's quite a few folks speaking after me as well. And wanted to say how grateful I am to all of you for your service to the state of Michigan on behalf of my district, as well as voters across the state of Michigan. We know that public service is not something to be taken lightly, and we're grateful for your service here today. And of course, just want to reiterate that all counties have completed their canvass of the 2020 general election and certified their results. And I believe it is critical for this body to certify the election. Obviously, we've heard a great many legal opinions about why it's imperative that we do so, but I'm coming here today, obviously as a state representative, but also as a voter, and ensuring that we have confidence in our elections, including this one and ones going forward, is critical to making sure that voters across the state of Michigan continue to engage in our democracy. More than 5.5 million voters cast ballots across the state for the general election in 2020. And I think it's imperative that we continue to set an example, not just for voters in Michigan, but across our country and globally, that we can conduct free and fair elections in the state of Michigan, and that those votes count and they mean something. The obvious strategy by a particular candidate and a particular political party to stall and delay is a tactic that's being used to sow chaos and confusion in our electorate, and it's deeply damaging to our democracy. So I just want to say that, you know, we know that the eyes of the world are on the state of Michigan this afternoon. And again, how grateful I am to your service, and my hope that you will certify this election so that way we can move forward in securing our elections and securing our democracy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Is there a question? Okay.
Hi.
Okay.
You just won an election. It was fairly close. Do you know, Lori, how
No,
many...
it wasn't fairly close, actually, sir. I won by more than 10,000 votes.
Okay, do you know how many precincts in your House district balance and can be recounted? Do you know any estimate on that?
I don't, and that's not my duty. That's the duty of the county clerk. You can ask her that when she comes up.
Well, I thought you might know.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Representative, and we will go on next to Representative Rachel Hood.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today, and thank you for your great service to the state of Michigan. My name is Rachel Hood.
Rachel, if you can state and spell your first and last name, and then your 3 minutes will begin.
Oh, sorry. Rachel Hood, R-A-C-H-E-L, Hood, H-O-O-D. Great. So our district turned out in record numbers to participate in this election. I serve the 76th House District in the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan. They respect our city and county clerks' professionalism in submitting our city's votes. And we are hopeful that you will also accept their contribution to the state.
Rachel, we're having a little bit of hard time with your audio. It's very mumbled. So I'm not sure if there's something on your end. Try again.
Okay, how is this?
It's a little better. We'll go.
Okay. The election is over and it's time to respect the will of the people. More than 5.5 million people have voted in historic numbers to move forward to tackle our nation's greatest challenges and make life better for all of us. Now the State Board of Canvassers must follow the law and their sworn duty to certify the election, just like all 83 county boards of canvassers. As the AG's office stated earlier in this meeting, if there isn't going to be a statewide or, if there is going to be a statewide or individual jurisdiction audit of the election, which Secretary of State Benson has already announced will happen, by law, that happens after the certification. So there is no legal basis not to certify or to delay. There is no logical basis to delay certification. This is a managerial and simple task that's necessary in order to resolve the very concerns individuals may be sharing about the accuracy of our elections. If a candidate would like to petition for a recount, they have that right, but by law, that can only happen after certification. If there's going to be a statewide, I mentioned that already. We need the certification in order to move forward with verification. And I hope that you will do your duty and continue a smooth election that the people of Michigan can trust. I appreciate your time and your service to the state. Thank you.
Is there any questions? Thank you very much. I'm going to move to Representative Ann Boleyn. If I mispronounced, I apologize. Boleyn. Doesn't look like she is on, so we will move to Mayor of Jackson, Derek Dobies. Okay. Derek, if you can hear us, if you'd state and spell your first and last name, and then your 3 minutes will begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Derek Dobies, D-E-R-E-K-D-O-B-I-E-S. I'm the mayor of the city of Jackson, birthplace of the Grand Old Party, the Republican Party. Over 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to be a credentialed election challenger at Detroit's absentee counting boards at the TCF Center. I was there from 9 a.m. until 11 p.m. I witnessed firsthand hours of Republican challengers harassing workers with frivolous claims, inappropriately demanding to know their partisanship, intentionally causing delay with redundant questioning, and fomenting inappropriate and intimidating stop the count chants right inside the room. I even witnessed Republican organizers training volunteers to challenge every single military absentee ballot, however meritless. Imagine a surgeon having to perform while constantly having their procedure and integrity questioned, all while others parade loud, distracting chants outside the operating room. But despite all that, those poll workers remain professional. We owe them a debt of gratitude for their long, difficult hours and tedious work to ensure every vote was counted, particularly during a pandemic. But even before they finished, President Trump and the Republican Party levied allegations of fraud and wrongdoing. To be clear, the vexatious litigation and the false narrative that it fabricated is an attempt to pressure civil servants such as yourselves to act illegally for political gain. Please don't take that bait. Recall what Jackson's state senator, Republican Majority Leader Mike Shirkey said after meeting with Trump just this past Friday. He said, and I quote, "We have not yet been made aware of any information that would change the outcome of the election in Michigan, and as legislative leaders, we will follow the law and follow the normal process regarding Michigan's electors, just as we have said throughout this election," end quote. Jackson voters implore you to listen to Senator Mike Shirkey. Follow the normal process. It is your moral, legal, and ethical responsibility to join the unanimous consensus of all of Michigan's 83 other county canvassing boards, all of which are also bipartisan, and join them in certifying the results of this election. Voters had a say in picking the political candidate they wanted to win. You do not legally have that choice. You are required to certify the results, and you can do that here today. Your actions matter. They matter for carrying out the will of the voters in Michigan and for preserving the democracy we all hold dear. Please do not break it today. Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you very much. I think we will take a quick recess with the board's approval. Okay, we are at recess, please. Okay, welcome back. Love technology, really do. I want to make a couple comments before we continue with our public comment. We do have over, I think the last count, over 500. And because of that, with permission of my board members, I think we're going to move it to about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. Norm?
That's fine. I mean, if there's anything we really need to, we can always extend it.
Yeah. Just because we want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, and I want to make sure that we go from there. But I want to make just a couple technical. After I call your name, your screen will change and you will rejoin the meeting as a presenter. Then you will need to turn your sound and video on before you can make live public comments. I will say, hey, if we can hear you, we will go from there. If you're indicated when signing up that you're going to be using your phone as a microphone during public comment, you will receive a phone call to the number you provided. Please answer the call. Once answered, you'll be able to hear the audio of the meeting. You'll need to turn off the sound and speakers on your computer at that time. And if it will probably be a number that you don't know. Just want to make sure that you answer that phone. You will be asked to unmute when it's time to speak. If you're viewing on your computer as well, your computer video will also be visible at that time. If we can't hear you, or we're having audio issues, or if it's really kind of mumbly, we ask that you email to make sure I have the right email. Yes. Capital NDOS, that's hyphen canvasser, CANVASSERS @michigan.gov to provide your public comment in writing. And also, just a reminder to everyone here, we are in a public forum, and your comments should be respectful, or I will let you know we will mute you. Going forward, if everyone is ready, like to start, and let's start with, and if I mispronounce your name, I apologize. We can always fix that when you come on. Mary Roulu, which is ROULEAU.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Rouleau. I live in Grosse Pointe Park. From October 5th through November 11th, I spent approximately 60 hours watching election workers in various capacities lawfully doing their job. For all but 8 of those hours, my observation time was in Detroit. From what I have read and heard from interviews with experts, your function today is ministerial. The failure to do your duty will embarrass and discredit our state. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, Wendy, if you just muted yourself, I can see it. If you could unmute and state and spell your first and last name. Yep, you muted yourself. You'll have to unmute. There you go.
Okay. It's Wendy Gronbeck, WENDY, GRONBECK. I am a resident of the village of the city of Douglas. Good afternoon, and I want to thank you for serving on this board and for the opportunity to speak to you today. From what I've heard today, the law seems pretty clear on what your duties are. Certify this undeniable decision by the people of Michigan. We don't need to endure any more failed court appearances before calling an election. But what I want to say today is that this decision is about so much more than certification of an election. What you hold in your hands is trust in our elections, and that ripples across the country and around the world. Nothing is more important in this democracy. I'm trying really, really hard to trust that public officials will protect our elections. It's very hard after this election cycle. It sometimes feels like officials are attempting to tear up my ballot right in front of me by stalling and recounting until they find a way to change the results. I've been a voter for over 50 years, and I've never before had to think about whether canvassers will certify an election. And I've certainly never had to fear that my legislators would run ramshackle over the canvassing process. But after last week's junket to Washington by our leaders, my fears are not put to rest, and this stalling needs to end. We rely on you to restore trust with your clear decision today. Trust in the process is a responsibility far more important than one election. I'm most concerned about the precedent the Board of Canvassers creates as it affects voting in the coming years. Your decision reaches far into the future. People will either trust the process or give up and not participate. Every 2 to 4 years, we'll continue our long history of free elections, or we'll endure this unending chaos and uncertainty. You've been handed a sacred duty, and I urge you to carry it out today. It seems the buck does stop with you. I hope that tomorrow we'll all awaken to a world where we can trust our vote counted. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, we will move on to Rose Cousins. And she is actually by phone. Do we have her? Okay. Rose, when you are unmuted, please state and spell your first and last name.
My name is Rose, R-O-S-E, Cousin, B-O-U-S-I-N. And this was the first year I worked elections at a polling place here in Lansing. And I found the system to be very credible. Everybody was honest, and we had challengers at the polling place, and I just felt the integrity was way up there. And I would highly encourage you guys to certify the elections today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rose.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, we'll go to Terry Weymouth.
Unmute. Hi.
Hi, Terry. If you can state and spell your first and last name.
Yes, my name is Terry Weymouth. That's Terry-Weymouth. I would like to convey my thanks to all the election workers who counted votes. I watched some of the counting process on live stream and on the evening news replays. It was clear that the multi-day ordeal was hard on everyone, and I'm glad that there are people willing to work diligently and carefully under such pressure. Were there problems with the process? Of course there were. This is a human enterprise and errors occur. I observed, however, that no one worked alone. Every step of the process was in the open. There were multiple hands, heads, and hearts focused on each problem. Errors were reduced by openness and cooperation. According to both the New York Times and the Washington Post, errors detected and solved left Wayne County with fewer than 400 unresolved problems. The canvassing reports before you report that there are fewer errors this time around than in previous elections. The next step of the process is final certification. We, the people, voted, counted. Now is the time to certify that count and approve the selection of the electors for the state of Michigan. The counting process, if the counting process needs improvements, we have plenty of time before the next election to pause and reflect, to offer suggestions, procedures, and new rules if necessary to make the process better. But this meeting is not the place or time to remedy those minor glitches and faults. Now is the time to act on the will of the people, move the process forward, let Michigan stand strong among the early voices. We believe in democracy, we believe in the voting process, endorse the results.
All right. Thank you, Terry. All right, we will now go to Laura Cronyn, and I believe we have her by the phone. Do we have her? We do.
Hello.
Hi, Laura. If you can state and spell your first last name and then begin.
Lauracronyn. I am a Detroit voter, and our voices have been negated in the past, most notably with the emergency management vote and our overwhelming objection to the Detroit bankruptcy. I've been here most of my life, a third generation. As a young girl, I saw droves of white families abandon their beautiful homes, churches, and schools just because families with different skin colors began to live their dreams of home ownership. Much of the tax base left with those white families, leaving Detroit in poverty for years because of that abandonment. It astonishes me to today to see a whole race of people leave their homes unforced just to maintain all white communities. I love my neighborhood and I love my neighbors. I would not take that anything different. During this 2016 administration, people in Detroit watched for 4 long years a president and a party that stole, grifted, cheated, and broke the law without being held accountable for any of it. All of this while Black and brown people are being charged, locked up, separated, and killed by dishonorable people in power. It is hard for us Detroiters to believe that so many people in this country looked at what has been going on, but cannot see what is so clear to the majority of us. Our reaction was to come out and vote this man out of office to try and get back to a rule of law that will be fair and just for all people. My advice for the people of Livonia, Grosse Pointe, or any of the surrounding suburbs is that if you wanted to influence the vote here, you should never have left or you should move here. That is your opportunity. We the people have so much work to do, not just to get back to where we were, but to continue to build a more perfect union where all of us are equal. Your job is to certify the vote, and there will be no rest until it's done and done properly.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to make sure we've moved, because we have, I believe we still have over 500. So board members, I think we wanted to bring the time down. About a minute, about a minute and a half. We'll go to a minute and a half. Also, I just want to remind everyone to kind of stay on the issue that we're here for today. And with that, we will move forward. And I've got Scott Riley. Scott, if you can state and spell your first and last name, and you've got about a minute and a half.
My name is Scott Riley, SCOTTREILLY. I'm a resident in Southfield, Michigan. I'm a retired automotive engineer, and I've been working on getting out the vote for the past 3 years in underserved communities. Those numbers you've been working over, fussing over, represent people. And I have one person I would like to describe to you to try and make that point. This was Peggy. She was an older Black woman who was in the Delray Senior Center on Grand in Southwest Detroit. She came into the community room, obviously blind, and she had made her way to the table with the help of another resident. One of my volunteers helped her fill out the forms for registration, as well as getting onto the permanent absentee ballot list and having her sign in the proper location. We came back later, confirmed that she had voted, and she was so pleased. And this was the first time she had voted, and it was this election where she wanted to have her voice heard. So I was also at TCF. I want to reflect back that what Derek said is what I saw. It was a chaos there to try and cause errors, not to catch errors. And this whole process was strategic to get it to you and then to get it to the legislature, as was just mentioned by Wendy. And if that happens, then you have negated Peggy's vote. And I hope you can live with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. We're going to go to Sumner Trucks.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sumner Truax. Thanks very much for the opportunity to be here. I am a student at the university. Oh, I need to spell my name. Yes, sorry, Sumner Truax. Excuse me, that's S-U-M-N-E-R, Truax, T-R-U-A-X.
Go ahead, yep.
I'm a student at the University of Michigan Law School. I'm a resident in Ann Arbor, and I'm a registered voter in Michigan. I've also served as a poll worker in Michigan, and on November 4th, I volunteered as a nonpartisan observer at the TCF Center during the absentee ballot counting process. And I just want to echo what Derek and Scott have said, that I saw no fraud, no impropriety on the part of the poll workers. I saw hundreds of professional, dedicated civil servants who are doing the important and frankly the mundane work that makes our democracy run, which is just counting the votes. And that so many people turned out in the middle of a global pandemic to serve our country is, I think, a sign of a healthy democracy. But you know, it's healthy only if those votes matter, and it's healthy only if their work matters, and it's healthy only if the gatekeepers, who are you, people like you, do your jobs. And as so many others have said today, your job today is not a political exercise. It's a democratic one. And democracy is so much bigger than people's partisan identity. And Mr. Schenkel, you know, you seem kind of fixated on how many partisans are at each precinct. And what a sad and small view of democracy that is. The people have voted, the votes have been counted, and the votes have been certified. And you have the easy job of adding up the results and certifying the sum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are going to move to, okay, I'm actually, sorry, I'm trying to move through my list, so. Okay. All right, so let's move to Brendan Flynn.
Hi, can you see and hear me?
Yes, Brendan, if you can please state and spell your first and last name.
Absolutely. My name is Brendan Flynn. That's B-R-E-N-D-A-N F-L-Y-N-N. I was a nonpartisan poll challenger at the TCF Center on November 3rd, as well as a resident of Ann Arbor. I'd like to point out first that the election workers and inspectors were exceptionally professional. Anytime they were questioned or even faced downright accusations from GOP challengers, the supervisors were willing to answer every question and to make sure that everyone understood the process. When I was there, there were even more GOP challengers than Democratic or nonpartisan challengers by a decent margin. The only disruptions I observed the entire day were from GOP challengers who had difficulty following the rules around the duplication process, GOP challengers not respecting distance requirements, and a challenger that requested an entire table's worth of ballots be thrown out because a poll worker wasn't wearing her name tag. They were denied. The bottom line was there was nothing irregular or fraudulent about what I observed at the TCF Center on November 3rd. But we have a professor here who likes to say that our constitutional system is like pickup basketball. You only have a game if both sides agree to play by the rules. If one side changes the rules or takes the ball away in the name of winning, there's no more system. Michigan Board of State Canvassers, the ball is in your hands. You have a legal, moral, ethical, and constitutional duty to certify the results today. Play by the rules. Our system depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brendan. We'll move to Elizabeth Tenkin, E-N-K-I-N. Okay, Elizabeth, if you can, when you unmute, state and spell your first and last name.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Elizabeth Temkin. My name is spelled Elizabeth. Last name Temkin, Temkin. I'm a third-year law student at the University of Michigan, and on November 4th, 2020, I served as a nonpartisan challenger with credentials from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights at the TCF Center in Detroit, where I observed absentee vote counting. I am here today to tell you what I saw firsthand as a nonpartisan challenger, and I'm also here as a citizen and voter to urge you to fulfill your duty as a board and to honor the will of the people of this state. I spent approximately noon until 7 p.m. at the TCF Center. And I could say many things about what I saw in Detroit that day, but with my limited time, I'd like to hone in on what I believe to be the most egregious interference that I witnessed on that date by Republican challengers. I spent much of the afternoon at one table, and sometime between approximately 2:30 and 3 p.m. word got around that a lawsuit had been filed. Shortly thereafter, the Republican challenger at my table communicated that she would be challenging every ballot moving forward. Challengers are only supposed to raise an objection when they have a good faith belief that there is an error or issue with the ballot in front of them. This blanket challenge was not made in good faith. There was no articulable reason given for these ballots to be thrown out. The only way to describe this was an effort to suppress the votes of a predominantly Black and presumably Democratic electorate. It was stunning to see such a large-scale effort to disenfranchise voters, and it has been even more disheartening to witness what has followed, repeated attempts to undermine the democratic process. All of this flies in the face of each and every Michigander who cast a ballot and the thousands of individuals who worked tirelessly to ensure that the election went smoothly. Any decision less than certification today will continue to cast doubt on this process. I urge you to fulfill your duty today and certify the results.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Your time has ended.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm never going to get this microphone thing right. I am never one who doesn't want to hear input from the public. We have a motion on the table. We have 500 people who wish to speak in front of us. We've now heard from a substantial number of them. We made sure to hear from all the clerks, all the elected officials. The public comment that we're getting now is related to the motion in front of us. I suspect if we vote that motion up or down, most of the people on the line waiting to give public comment would be satisfied. I'm suggesting I would like to move the motion to certify and then hear the public comment after.
I do have one more, Clerk.
Okay, one more clerk.
I do have Michael Seacrest, who is the clerk of Canton Township.
Yes, hello. Yes, hello. I will. My name is Michael Seacrest. I'm the clerk in Canton Township. I was. Michael,
if you can spell and state
spell my name. Sure.
Yeah.
Michael Segrist. Michael Segrist. And I don't want to get in the way of one of the commissioners kind of called question there, because I do think it is germane to the direction of this body. Obviously, I have 75,000 registered voters in Canton Township. We had 56,000 of them show up. 58,000 of them show up and vote on election day or vote by absentee. We processed 42,000 absentee ballots. We were counting them for 24 hours. I had begged the legislature to do what they could to alleviate that burden, because I'm concerned over the demand and what it would do to my precinct inspectors to work 24 hours without a break. The legislature gave us a half solution, and we got and so here we are today. This was always going to be the direction we would get into, but I want to ask this board to fulfill the oath that they took, much so in the same way that my inspectors fulfilled their oath and I fulfilled my oath to to uphold the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Michigan, and faithfully discharge our duties. The Michigan Constitution, Article 1, Section 1 gives all political power inherent in the people. And the Declaration of Independence says that the government derives its just powers from the consent of the governed. To throw out, delay, or ignore the results of an election because you don't like the outcome at the behest of a political party, candidate, or organization is a betrayal of our oaths. It is a betrayal of the duty before us. I would crawl across broken glass to make sure voters of all political parties have their legitimate vote cast. And the fact that we have gotten this far today is a slight against our country and our system. And people are doing what no foreign adversary has been able to do to America in over 240 years, and that is to call into question our entire government and our elections. This is shameful. Thank you.
Questions for, well, thank you very much. I knew I had one more clerk, so I wanted to, there are some other elected, local elected officials too, but Mr. Tooth, if you want us to.
I would like to call the question and then continue with somebody hearing after that.
I will make a statement if that's okay. I want to be clear about one thing. I think any allegation of voter fraud should be taken seriously and investigated. I believe in this case, a post-election audit should be conducted. And I believe complaints of election fraud need to be investigated, and if found, must be prosecuted under the law. The state law is clear that we do not have that authority, and other entities do. And I encourage those state officials to act and do what they can to preserve election integrity. But this board must respect the authority entrusted to it and follow the law as written. We must not attempt to exercise power we simply don't have. In this case, the law is absolutely clear. We have a clear legal duty to certify the result of the election as shown by the returns that were given to us. We cannot and should not go beyond that. As John Adams once said, we are government of laws, not men. And this board needs to adhere to that principle here today. This board must do its part to uphold the rule of law and comply with our legal duty to certify this election. I will be supporting the motion.
As we, Norm, would you like to make a statement?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, wait till it's green, Norm. There you go.
I want Michigan State colors up. Okay. I have a statement that's prepared. I have a statement. It's prepared. I'm going to read it, and I have a copy for the clerk. So you don't need to try to follow me on it. The role of the Michigan Board of Canvassers dates back to the 1850s, and I take this responsibility seriously. Today, I'm faced with an important decision whether or not to certify the results of the November 3rd general election. Of critical importance is the fact that only after certification may candidates who allege errors in voting pursue legal remedies, such as recounts. The law indicates we must meet within 20 days of the election and have 40 days to certify the vote. Any delay from this must be to await the receipt or correction of returns or other necessary purposes. I need to review the Wayne County Board of Canvasser meeting from last Tuesday to determine the sufficiency of their certification. I determined this is other necessary purpose. 4 years ago, Democrat Party Chair Mark Brewer, representing Jill Stein, a failed presidential candidate, said, quote, Stein is seeking to ensure all votes were counted and that the state's ballot tabulating machines aren't susceptible to human manipulation. The quote continues, the purposes of this manual recount are to ensure the accuracy and integrity of the election, he told the Board of State Canvassers. Every vote must be counted. The Michigan Republican Party chairwoman, Ronna Romney McDaniel, chastised the Stein campaign for pursuing the recount and called on the Hillary Clinton campaign, which had lost in Michigan to Donald Trump, by around 10,000 votes to renounce the recount effort. Michigan voters are being disenfranchised, and this recount should not happen, McDaniel said. Hillary Clinton should call off the recount. She should ask Jill Stein to abide by the results that were certified today. The Trump campaign also weighed in as Trump spokesman Jason Miller referred to the recount as nonsense, noting that the Clinton conceded to Trump and chastising reporters for chasing the shiny object. Quote, I really think it's ridiculous that so much oxygen has been given to the recount effort when there's absolutely no chance of any election results changing. This election has been decided, Miller told reporters on a call. I cite this recent history to remind the Michigan citizens and the state and local press that 220 is not the first time there have been questions about voting machines, election procedures, and the process here in Michigan. What has become too clear to us in Michigan and across the country that Michigan has a problem conducting elections. I'm talking right into this thing. As I said, Michigan has a problem conducting elections. For that, I apologize to the citizens and to this nation and commit to working to see that the problems are addressed before the 2021 mayoral election in Detroit and the statewide 2022 elections are held. There is no excuse for the confusion and uncertainty that seems to follow every election in our state. It is unacceptable that so many questions have been raised about the 2020 election. The Secretary of State has been on notice of these issues, and her failures to effectively address them have resulted in national embarrassment for Michigan. Just this past August, after our primary election, I was under the assumption that she was going to use her statutory supervisory control to run the November election in Detroit. This did not happen. Her inability or unwillingness to properly organize Michigan elections so that only eligible voters vote and that all votes are properly verified, and that abuse of absentee voting procedures and ballots is prevented, and that votes, when being verified or counted, are subject to proper scrutiny by accredited poll workers is unexcusable. There needs to be a thorough and full review of Michigan's election process and procedures so that this never happens again, and we don't have a nation watching and wondering what happened in Michigan. The Secretary of State must fully cooperate with this review and must be prepared to address the serious shortcomings revealed in the November election. The people of our state deserve better. Numerous questions have been raised that may be legitimate, but the Board of Canvassers do not have the time, the resources, or the authority, potentially, to get to the bottom of most of these issues. It is clear that the Secretary of State acted perhaps illegally in a way that exacerbated the situation by forcing certain local clerks to distribute ballot applications to everyone on the qualified voter file. That action was contrary to state law and resulted in some voters arriving to vote on election day only to be told, you've already voted. The unusual contract with the partisan Rock the Vote organization may have added ineligible voters to the QVF. All questions and concerns should be addressed so that never again we have an election and with distrust and suspicion. Let's look at everything and fix our problems. In 2000, Florida was a national embarrassment when their election procedures and process were found to be inconsistent and inadequate. Officials on both sides decided never again, and on a bipartisan basis got busy and fixed the problems of Florida. 20 years later, it's time for Michigan to act. Our problems are not new. 4 years ago, Democrat Mark Brewer complained loudly and raised questions about voting irregularities and the fact that 50% of Detroit precincts could not be recounted. Just 3 months ago, we were shocked to learn that the problem had worsened. The number of precincts that were unable to be recounted rose to 72% for the AB count boards. Since we cannot rely upon our elected Secretary of State to provide a review of these conflicts, we must look elsewhere. That is why today I am asking the Michigan legislature to conduct an in-depth review of all election processes and procedures in Michigan. I will offer a motion to make this request from the entire Board of Canvassers, since concerns have been raised by members of all the parties. And I believe, nope, not quite done. Since Republicans and Democrats have raised the issues of serious election irregularities, the legislative review should have support for the board and on both parties in the legislature. Since many reforms and recommendations may ultimately require the governor's signature, I would ask that she also lend her support in this effort. Hopefully 2022 will see elections conducted the way they were in Florida this year, While we set records for early voting and absentee ballots, everything was transparent and well managed. The election results were known early and no dispute over the conduct of the election. It is my greatest hope that after the next election, this board will be able to certify the results in an environment where there are no unanswered questions or suspicions that our election was in any way compromised. All citizens need to be assured that Michigan is conducting clean, accurate, and professional elections. And to finalize it, I do not plan on voting for certification. I believe Wayne County certification process needs to be looked at. I think there's serious problems with it. And that's the end of my statement. Thank you.
Okay, Norm, and I know that you have it written for our...
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
I believe the purpose of this board is to assure voters that every vote is counted and that procedures are fair for everyone, all parties involved. I agree with my colleague Norm. The voters in this state, through a ballot question, changed fundamentally how we vote in this state. We now have no reason absentee voting. We have same-day voter registration. We have the ability to conduct audits after the fact. That's great. I supported all of those things, but it requires that we change our election systems. We have to allow for earlier processing of absentee ballots, in my opinion. I think we need to look at how we certify and train challengers, how the parties do that, and figure out, I would hope, how we could do that on a bipartisan basis. I think we need to get rid of, I think we're the only one in the nation that says you can't recount a precinct if it's unbalanced. There are many things the legislature, and only the legislature, can do to fix this. And so I heartily support Norm's idea of this board, a bipartisan commission involving the legislature, the governor's office, the Secretary of State. Let's modernize how we do elections in this state. Let's clean it up. We're full of human errors. I don't believe there was fraud. I've seen no evidence of fraud. But there's lots of human errors given how we do things. And I think that we need to seriously look at that. I think we need to seriously fix that. I was very disappointed when, at that point, President-elect Trump wanted to halt the recount, the statewide recount we were engaged in 4 years ago, because we were almost done with it. And what it was showing was that, in fact, there's some human errors, but no fraud happening. And we never got to complete that. So I'm in favor of an audit, but I'm mostly in favor of fixing and modernizing how we conduct elections in this state. I will be voting for the motion.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Okay, I'm watching Norm, sorry. Is there any further discussion on the motion? If there is no further discussion on the motion from the board members, Melissa, will you please take a roll call vote?
Chair Bradshaw.
Yes.
Vice Chair Van Langveld.
Yes.
Ms. Matuzak.
Yes.
Mr. Schinkel.
Abstain.
Madam Chair, you have 3 aye votes,
The
1
motion.
abstention.
The motion does move.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Second motion, I move that the Board of State Canvassers authorize the staff of the Bureau of Elections to represent the board in any recount of votes cast at the November 3rd, 2020 general election.
It's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion on the motion? Melissa, will you please take a roll call vote?
Chair Bradshaw.
Yes.
Vice Chair Van Langveld.
Yes.
Ms. Matuzak.
Yes.
Mr. Schinkel.
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Chair, you have 4 aye votes.
That motion does pass.
Madam Chair, I would just suggest as we move forward that we complete the next item on the agenda, which is the special election of the Michigan House of Representatives 4th District, and that then we go back to public comment.
I'm green. I'd like to make a motion before we do that.
Okay, Norm, go ahead.
As I mentioned in my comments, I'd like to make this motion. Madam Chair, I move the Michigan Board of Canvassers request the Michigan Legislature conduct an in-depth review of the Michigan election process and procedures to address concerns that have been raised by experts and citizens about our elections in order to assure our citizens that Michigan elections are accurate, transparent, and fully protective of all citizens' constitutional rights.
Support.
Discussion? Sorry, is there any, it's been moved and supported, is there any discussion on the motion? There are no discussion. Melissa, will you please take a roll call vote?
Chair Bradshaw,
Yes.
Vice Chair Van Langveld,
Yes.
Ms. Matuzak,
Yes.
Mr. Schenkel.
Yes.
Madam Chair, there are 4 aye votes.
The motion does carry. I think we will move on to our next item on the agenda, which is recording the results of the November 3rd, 2020 special election for the Michigan House of Representatives 4th District partial term ending 1/1/2021.
Is there a report?
Yes, matter of fact.
Yes.
Yes, it is. It's towards the back.
The second pink sheet.
Second page sheet, okay. Got it.
I can just briefly say that for all the reasons stated previously regarding the process, the vote totals were such that Abraham I. Ash was elected with 28,379 votes, and staff does recommend that the board certify.
Ready for a motion?
Mm-hmm.
I will make the motion. I move that the board record the results of the November 3rd, 2020 special election for the office of State Representative 4th District as certified by the Wayne County Board of Canvassers
Louder, Norm.
on November 17th, 2020. It's the one that's printed in our book. From everyone.
I'll support the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Melissa, please take a roll call vote.
Chair Bradshaw.
Yes.
Vice Chair Van Langveld,
Yes.
Ms. Matuzak.
Yes.
Mr. Schenkel.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 4 aye votes.
The motion does move. Okay, so I want to just check. I'm sure that we still have a lot of people, and going to go back to public comment from, are we all set? So there's 460, which I just want to, I want to say something before we go, and I know everyone's kind of said their statements, but I cannot say this. A thank you to the Bureau and the Bureau staff and the technical people that have been running our Board of Canvassers meetings for us through Microsoft Teams. Thankfully, we didn't have to do that today. But also to all the clerks, the staff in those clerks' offices, and honestly, all of the citizens who stepped up, who wanted to be a part of this election process in the state of Michigan. Cannot thank all of you enough. Democracy only works when we participate. And with that, I want to go to our continue our public statements. Okay, and we'll start with Sean Brennan. And we are a go. Sean, if you can state and spell your first and last name, and thank you for waiting, and we'll go for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Sean, S-E-A-N, last name Brennan, B-R-E-N-N-A-N.
Okay.
I'm a law student at the University of Michigan and a resident of Ann Arbor. On November 4th, I spent over 12 hours inside the TCF Center observing the absentee ballot count as a challenger for the Democrats. In that time, I saw nothing but professionalism and dedication from the election workers and their supervisors, despite the frequent harassment they received from Republican challengers. Far from being denied access, these challengers made their presence known by making aggressive comments, shouting en masse to stop the count, and hovering directly over election workers' shoulders in violation of social distancing mandates. My experience at the TCF Center is best summed up by one interaction I had with a Republican challenger who, similar to Ms. Temkin's experience, was challenging every single ballot being counted. I explained that permissible challenges required good reason to believe that that particular voter was ineligible, and therefore indiscriminately challenging all ballots was not allowed under Michigan law. She looked me in the eye and responded, "I don't care what the law says. The Republican Party told me to do this, so I'm going to do it." Despite what Republican Party officials might say, the law was clear on November 4th, and the law is clear today. The Secretary of State has confirmed that the election was conducted fairly, securely, and transparently, and all 83 counties have now certified their election results. This year, the people of Michigan exercised their franchise in historic numbers, and it is the duty of the State Board of Canvassers to honor their will by certifying the election results. Today, by certifying these results, the board has done an important service to democratic norms and the rule of law in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. We will move to Joe Spalding. Okay, we're good. Hello, Joe. If you can state and spell your first and last name, and then you've got a minute and a half. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, my pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm a Latino, and my name is Joe Spalding, Joesbaulding. Board of Canvassers. You might not know me, but Norm, you and I were in the same documentary together. It's called Slay the Dragon. It's on Hulu. I was the strategist for the Prop 2 petition that ended gerrymandering in Michigan, and that's on this petition. After this board refused for more than 50 days to review the form of a petition, a process that normally takes 2 days, I helped organize the direct action campaign that we both remember as the moment when Michiganders started paying serious attention to these meetings. It's sad that the pandemic stops me from helping recreate that event, but it gives me hope that a lot of people are watching this on Twitter and other places online. There are two discussions going on here. One is entirely in subtext. It's mostly done through dog whistles. It's not as simple as people who want secure elections and people who want voters to have easier access to the polls. Everyone wants the secure elections. Republicans are actively trying to suppress the vote, like my friend Ned Stabler called out very, very exquisitely in the Wayne County Board of Canvassers meeting. Thank God, Norm, you're going to review that. I got 2 death threats on Twitter, by the way, so it's not just everybody else when I boosted Ned's video there. The cold truth is that Trump lost in Michigan, and Republicans will keep losing if they don't stop siding with out-of-touch, elite, gold-bricking grifters, terrorist-adjacent anti-virus protection mobs, and Ted Nugent. That's beside the point, though. I want to be very clear. The votes that, Norm, you are spitting in the face of, those are Black voters in Detroit and Wayne County, and this is unacceptable. So I'm glad we did the right thing. I'm glad the will of the voters is not going to.
Joe, I'm sorry, the time is up. I apologize, but we have a minute and a half for each person. So we are going to be going next.
And Madam Chair, I would like you to remind all the speakers that we are not engaging in personal attacks.
Yes. If you want to discuss on the topic, but I think this is the second or third that has gone after a board member, and that is not appropriate. So, I've got Charles Grassi. Does not look like we've have him there. Let's move to Brad Ross. Do we have Brad? Are we waiting for connection? Brad, are you there? Is Brad with us? If he's not, we are actually going to move on, and we're going to go to Maureen Kleinsmith. Do we have Maureen? All right, so let's go to Pavan Bang Gapuram. And if I mispronounced your name, I apologize profusely. Is that Pavan?
Hello. Thank you very much for
If you
taking
can-
the time to hear my testimony. I'll remind you.
Before you start, I do need
sorry.
you to state your first and last name, and then you can go.
Little eager on the draw there. That's first name Pavan, Pavan. Last name Vangipuram, Vangipuram for Mary. Thank you for taking the time to hear my testimony. The law states that you shall certify the results. As you have done, I will remind you that you are not in the role of investigator or adjudicator. And by arrogating for yourselves that power, you are usurping power that you don't have. And with all this playing coy and making indications that you will deadlock the board is another usurpation of that power. There is no credible evidence that a single vote was fraudulently cast. These wild allegations on the part of Mr. Giuliani and company are as ridiculous as they are false. And it is a sad day for American democracy when these baseless, unsubstantiated allegations can create enough doubt to subvert the process. This is not even getting into the implications of systemic racism and white supremacy of some of the board members' desire to exclude Detroit votes. And that calling into question this routine process, giving the indication that you are amenable to taking these wild, unsubstantiated claims as plausible simply because they serve partisan interests is very disturbing. I'm a Democrat, and when we lost in 2016 in Michigan, we organized ourselves and we got Americans to change their minds and vote for our party, because that's what you do. You don't try to subvert the process through these arcane methods. That is not American. That's frankly un-American, and it should be denounced in the strongest possible terms. So in that regard, I'm happy for the board members who did vote to certify, and unhappy with the board members who did not. Thank you.
Sorry, my apologies, Sharon. I did not have my mic on. If you can state and spell your first and last name, and you have a minute and a half, and thank you for joining us.
My name is Sharon Cooper, SharonCooper. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the board. And I'm actually speaking on behalf of educators and students. I am a product of the Detroit Public Schools and all the way through 3 degrees at Wayne State. And I've been an educator for over 46 years. And Pontiac through Detroit in private schools at Cranbrook and finishing as an administrator in Farmington. So I've seen education in a lot of different venues, but a common thread is the importance of education in a democracy. And the democracy relies on respect for the Constitution, both at the federal and the state level. You have to certify this, and you've done your duty and your sworn oath. And numerous times I've taken students down to the Detroit Federal Courthouse to watch the naturalization ceremony. And every justice has emphasized the importance of a vote. It is your responsibility, and it also is your right to vote. Every vote must count. So once again, the importance of listening to the voters and your role in certifying this election is so important. So also, you are now educators, because young people, not just in Michigan, but around the country, are looking at what you're doing. So you are actually teaching them the respect for the Constitution and how encouraging it was that so many people voted, and you are acknowledging the right to count the votes. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, let's move to Eric Aronoff. Do we have Eric? I'm going to keep going. We're going to go to Ray Wert, W-E-R-T. Looks like we have Ray.
Hello?
So Ray, if you can just state and spell your first and last name, and you have a minute and a half, and thank you for joining us.
Sure, thank you. My name is Ray Wert, R-A-Y-W-E-R-T. And I had planned today to speak about my experiences as a vote challenger at the TCF Center, but instead all I'm going to say is thank you to the Board of State Canvassers for doing your duty, and specifically thank you to the Republican Vice Chair for setting aside partisanship and doing the right thing. And with that, I turn over the remainder of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. We're going to go to Fonda Brewer.
Hello.
Hi, Fonda. If you can spell and state and spell your first and last name, you've got a minute and a half, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. My name is spelled F-O-N-D-A Brewer, B-R-E-W-E-R, and I reside in Delta Township, and I am a trustee for Delta Township, but I am speaking for myself. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for doing your job today. I appreciate what you did. And in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, he said, and so we shall have to do more than register and more than vote. We shall have to create leaders who embody virtues we can respect, who have moral and ethical principles we can applaud with. So today, I thank you for being the leaders that we can respect. I thank you for your moral and ethical principles as you acted on behalf of the voice of the voters of Michigan. And I want to make sure that the reason it's so important that you did what you did today is because you're going to allow the new elected officials to focus on the major and not the minor. The majors for me, there are two: poverty. 16% of Michigan residents, including children and seniors, live in poverty. Homelessness. We have 8,575 homelessness on any given day. So your move today allows the new elected officials to focus on the major and not the minor. Thank you for the job you did today. Thank you.
Thank you, Fonda. Okay, we're going to move to Philip Newman. And Philip, when you unmute, if you can state and spell your first and last name, get a minute and a half, and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. My name is Philip Newman, P-H-I-L-L-I-P-N-E-U-M-A-N. I've been a practicing attorney for 37 years, living and working in Farmington Hills. I've been a voter protection advocate for many years, and this year I was a poll challenger at the Oakland County Combined Absent Voter Counting Board. I can tell you from personal observation that the men and women serving as poll workers were honest, hardworking, and diligent in their efforts to count the absentee votes of many communities in Oakland County. While I'm sure that there may have been some minor discrepancies in the tabulation, I'm also confident that these discrepancies are not the result of fraud or any intentional act on anyone's part. I had a lot of other things that I wanted to say. However, I'm very thrilled that the board took its vote, and I would like to echo Ray Wert and especially commend Vice Chair Van Langeveld for your vote. I know you must have been under tremendous pressure, and I appreciate that you did the right thing. So thank you very much to the board for your vote, and I look forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
For those who are watching, I want to point out that we are now engaged in one of the tasks for being a board of canvasser, which everyone who won the election gets a certificate with our actual real signatures on it. So while you are speaking, we are listening to you, but we are also signing certificates for those who won the election.
On the races that we certify.
Right.
I just need to stipulate that. So, and one of those races are the judicial races. So you'll see, I will actually keep on going. So we're going to go to Owen Goslin. Okay. Okay, Owen, when you unmute, state and spell your first and last name. You have a minute and a half, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. My name is Owen Goslin, Owengoslin, and I live in Sheboygan, Michigan. I work with a nonpartisan advocacy group based in Northern Michigan called Center for Change. This year, our organization fielded poll challengers and poll workers in 5 counties in the Eastern UP and Northern Michigan. And I myself served as a poll challenger in Sheboygan County. The experience left me confident in the integrity of our election process and incredibly proud of my neighbors who worked the polls during a pandemic to ensure the vote. Our members decided to serve on election day because we believe that on this one day at least, we all get to have one equal voice in our government. On this one day, no matter where we live, what we look like, how much money we have in our bank account, our voice matters and our vote counts. This year, many people from all walks of life stood up for democracy and volunteered to work the polls during the worst pandemic in over 100 years. They did their job and oversaw an election with the highest turnout in my lifetime at personal risk to themselves. Thank you, members of the board, for respecting the integrity of their work. In my county, many of my preferred candidates lost their races, including a close friend who ran for county office and who would have made an outstanding public servant. But while I disagree with how many of my neighbors voted, I respect their decision and their right to be counted. And in the same way, I stand with the citizens of Detroit and their right to be heard and counted as well. The accusations that were made against election workers in Wayne County were shameful, and the actions of the Republican poll challengers at the TCF Center went against the rules and regulations that poll challengers should follow. Across the state, from small townships to big cities, from Sheboygan to Detroit, we have the same processes.
I'm really sorry, but I have to cut you. I'm so sorry. We have to keep within our time frame. Thank you, though. I appreciate it. We are going to go to Carolyn Maelstrom, and if I mispronounced it, I apologize. Carolyn, when you unmute, please state and spell your first and last name.
Sure. My name is Carolyn. That's Carolyn, and my last name is Malmstrom. And I'm just a regular moderate voter, and I skipped work to listen because I wanted to reemphasize the importance of following the process for the image it sets for our state and the wider world. I'm in the middle of recruiting employees right now. They're looking at our culture and our state very carefully. And it's really important that we show that we follow our processes carefully, that we follow our own rules, and that we're behaving in an upright manner. So thank you for your vote today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, we're going to go to Garrett Brown. And we're going to keep on moving. Jeff Alson, Alson.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Jeff. State and spell your first last name. You have a minute and a half, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'll be brief. My name is Jeff Alson, Jeffalson. I strongly support the board's recent vote to certify. We should be celebrating the record turnout and the cleanest election we have ever had in Michigan. Accordingly, I'm very disappointed in Mr. Schinkel's partisan talking points, casting doubt on the will of Michigan voters and the integrity of our election process. He is apparently willing to sacrifice democracy to get a favorable tweet from a wannabe two-bit dictator trying to pull off a banana republic coup. He should be ashamed of himself. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. We're going to, I have a first name only of Jed. I think it looks like we're going to move on. We're going to go to Margaret Oliver. Oh, Jed is on. Okay, I have Jed. Looks like he is by phone. Okay, if you can state and spell your first and last name, please.
Who are you speaking to?
Is this Jed?
Yeah, it's John Edward Delaney, John-Edward, Delaney, Delaney. I guess I'm the only Republican that's actually going to comment on this channel. So what I just saw, and I got to speak quickly, so hang on. I just saw a travesty in the last 3 hours of this meeting. I've been in this state, and I'm ashamed to say I'm a Michigander now. I've been in this state since 1961. What I saw in the last 3 hours is a disenfranchisement based on you looking at the clock. You knew you had 400 people, so you knew at 3 minutes it was going to take 16 hours, and you immediately disenfranchised us that have been waiting and that signed up early enough to be number 33 on the list. It's disappointing to see that, but it's what I expect now coming from the state of Michigan, and again, I'm ashamed to be here. I, too, was a poll challenger in 2016 when Jill Stein attempted a recount. And there was so much nefarious and illegal and problems that we noted and we put down and wrote down specifically, but just so happened Jill Stein's group recanted the recount at noon, so everything went away, so nothing was actually exposed on the nefarious actions. So it's a shame that we continue to do this, and about 72 hours from now, this is all going to be said and done and gone, and you are not going to challenge the individual elements to look at the vote from the future. This is an ongoing thing. What I see now is Tammany Hall attached from Lansing to the city of Detroit, Wayne County.